Right, hey guys, how are we doing? Back another video from Touchdown Mark. We finally got the Cell arc review. It's 2 hours and 15 minutes long, so I'm not going to do too much of an intro. I did see though that Team 4 Star have done something for this at some point, so that's interesting. And the last two reviews have been boss. The editing, the music, the way Mark talks, phenomenal. I reckon they've spent so much time on this to just try and give us the same kind of standard they've done the last two, so let's get into it.
Strap in, everyone, for the most exciting shakeup this series has to offer. Through the Saiyan material, we explored what it means to be true to who you are in the face of adversity, examining the themes of nature versus nurture in one of the best clashes I've ever seen.
Vegeta vs Goku is just sick, just so sick.
Following that, we pressed forth onto the stars above, journeying to Namek, where we encountered the terrifying Frieza. There, the Saiyan arc's themes were pushed to their natural breaking points, forcing Goku out of his comfort zone and into yet unexplored waters, wielding a terrifying power against a seemingly insurmountable evil, one that left the future of the series in a very uncertain position.
God, Super Saiyan's just so iconic.
However, this week is different. While building once again off of the bedrock story established in the last two arcs, this time we are revisiting the themes of expectations versus reality in what is considered to be the best stretch of story this long and winding tale has by many.
Wow, yeah, expectations versus reality really is one hell of a theme throughout all this, man. Every time the characters expect something, they just get slapped in the face with the cold hard truth.
Delivering alongside some of the most recognizable fights in the series, offering snapshots in history, moments in time that to this day resurface over and over again in pop culture, at the heart of this narrative is a tale that explores what it truly means to appreciate life.
And to think as well that so many changes were made from Akira Toriyama as he was making it. It's just unbelievable how he made it work.
The toll one with great power must pay in order to protect it. There's no sense in delaying this any further. This is what many of you have been waiting for. This is simply Akira Toriyama's inspirational epic, The Cell Saga.
Cool. Let's get it! Oh, mate. Oh.
To tell you the truth, having not read through this material in quite some time, from the moment this arc kicks off, I was taken aback by quite a few aspects of the story that felt, different to how I remembered it. And through that, I gained a new appreciation for the story beyond the widely understood troubles it faced creatively early on, a newfound appreciation which began with Act 1. Given the story Akira Toriyama wants to tell in this material, I think this is perhaps the most clever way to go about it. From the very moment this arc kicks off, the connective tissue that establishes a relationship between this and the previous arc sets in motion what ultimately becomes the single biggest misdirection this arc sets out to accomplish.
Yeah, I love it. It's like Frieza is back. It's like, whoa, what are we going to do? And then out of nowhere,
and that misdirection
Trunks
is Son Goku. Right from the get-go, we are anticipating Goku's return.
And he doesn't, yeah, and it's like, because he hasn't come back, it's like,
with questions like, where is he?
Who's going to protect the planet?
Why didn't he come back? And moreover, once Frieza makes his presence felt as he approaches Earth for his revenge, we are overcome by this thought that we can't do this without him.
Yeah.
Whether you're looking at the belligerent and egotistical Vegeta or the unsure Son Gohan, you can see in their faces the look of despair when they realize the scope of the foe they have to defend against.
So freaking cool.
僕が言ったお前の誤算とはスーパーサイヤ人は孫悟空さん一人じゃない。ここにもいたということだ。
So cool.
To say that I was blown away by this debut of Trunks would be an understatement of the highest magnitude.
I'll never forget watching it on TV and just be like, whoa, what's going on here?
Having come off the back of what I consider to be the most fun and impressive arc conclusion thus far in Goku vs. Frieza, which brandished a transformation I had obsessed with ever since laying my eyes on it, here Trunks arrives out of nowhere in all of his Super Saiyan majesty, much to the chagrin of a certain prince.
It's like, what?
What a phenomenal way to re-establish the stakes he's
They
about
can't
to
do that.
reveal
at
our
it.
heroes. The villain of the previous arc dispatched in an instant by this powerful warrior, only to then reveal the horror that awaits was too much for even him to handle. It completely and utterly uproots any sense of balance we as an audience had about the top of the power chain here. But the line Akira Toriyama decided to walk with Trunks is a fascinating one, even if you ignore this. With an intro and design like this, one might think he's the de facto leader of this arc. And while he is in some respects by virtue of him bringing the call to action to light for our heroes to answer, he's revealed to be incredibly naive and ill-prepared for pretty much every aspect of this mission he's on. The moment we meet Trunks, he's placed on this pedestal, the likes of which he'll never fully scale again until the very, very end of this arc, and maybe not even then. While he is a Super Saiyan, and yes, while he is on some level a capable fighter, seen through his comfortable dismantling of Frieza himself,
cut him up
he's
and
also
bye.
a child of no more than 17 years.
Oh, the sword thing is so cool as well. It's like, whoa.
If it wasn't clear, I think this scene is spectacular from a narrative standpoint.
Sick.
After having declared himself stronger than Goku to Frieza, in a moment that should have been another impressive notch on the young Trunks' belt, the fact that he's actually from the future, the reveal of this fact is instead nestled in a moment that exposes his naivety and inexperience. And these are two elements, two attributes of his makeup that end up defining his character in this arc. A character that so feverishly wants and needs to be a hero in spite of these drawbacks to his character. Having come to this timeline for the sole purpose of giving Goku his heart medicine and to alert everyone of the impending android threat, due to Goku's supposed lateness, Trunks additionally decides to step in to defeat Frieza himself, ultimately changing the trajectory of this timeline. However, and this is what makes this scene impressive to me, Goku wasn't actually 3 hours away. He could have and absolutely would have been there in an instant if he needed to, which he was destined to, thanks to his acquisition of another impressive technique, teleportation, or otherwise known as instant transmission. And so in this first panel that all but explicitly tells us Trunks is a time traveler, the first we see in this series, a moment that shifts the reality of this world yet again, he also admits to making a very foolish mistake.
Yeah, because the last arc with Frieza was like totally expanded it with the whole space, and it's like, whoa, you've opened like up so many more options for Dragon Ball now. And then Trunks comes along, it's like, well, I travel from the future. It's like, we've got time travel as well, and it's just like that opens up a whole other route that Dragon Ball go down as well. And lo and behold, yes, it does as it goes forward.
A mistake that places an emphasis on Trunks' naivety, and one that demonstrates Goku's competence as a warrior and steadfastness as someone we can rely on. Once again, highlighting for us that everything will be okay because Goku is here to protect us. This is all to say that from the very moment this arc begins, Akira Toriyama is deliberately placing the notion in all of our heads that without Goku, the future is lost. Which, while consistent with the prior arcs of this story, something about this arc does feel distinctly different to either the Frieza or the Saiyan sagas. While those prior stories offered a variety of different points of view or B-plots to follow along with, for the first act and some of the second act of this story, there's a specific emphasis placed on Goku that doesn't really let up. Taken away from the likes of Vegeta and Gohan, who both enjoyed their own B-plots in the last arc, our attention once again is firmly on Son Goku for...
Yeah, it really is like, where's Goku? He's not here. What are we going to do? Ah, Goku's here. Yay. All right, Goku. You need to stay alive because in the future you're not there. And yeah, Goku.
For what feels like the first time since the 23rd Tenkaichi Budokai, a conscious decision that was made to only further emphasize what will be the single greatest series of payoffs this story has ever delivered and quite possibly ever will. And so, while Trunks' arrival has been spectacular and the revelation of time travel once again opens up a ton of possibilities, and while Goku is presented as the one true hope for mankind, this is only one aspect, one element of what makes this a truly interesting and emotionally engaging story. You see, unlike what this story is telling us about Goku being the most important character to follow, there's another dimension to the story, one that follows another character that so desperately wants to be the one to lead the way, and another who so desperately just doesn't.
Doesn't,
And
yeah,
it's the
man.
paths that each of
But
these
I'm a
two
pacifist.
venture down and how Goku's character influences their respective decisions that ultimately makes this one of the best arcs out there in its unique approach. And so, Trunks leaves. Chi-Chi agrees to allow Gohan train with his father and Piccolo, all the while everyone else endures their own intense, independent training. With the change from the previous two arcs' pattern of wait for Goku to having the entire future seemingly resting on his shoulders now, as I said, the aura surrounding Goku almost feels like that which he possessed during the 23rd Tenkaichi Budokai. A returning hero from a mystical land possessing otherworldly strength and a destiny to fulfill as the Earth's #1 defender. Showing off his teleportation, revealing his dominance over Trunks, it seems despite the efforts of other fighters in this series, at this present time, having Goku on our team almost feels like cheating. Until it doesn't.
Oh, yeah.
The stretch of story that follows this 3-year time skip leading up to the eventual reveal of Cell is perhaps one of the most fascinating case studies of Akira Toriyama's writing style that I've come across so far.
Well, yeah, because like I was saying earlier, like for him to be told, no, don't want that villain, no, don't want that villain, no, don't want that villain, and him making it work and tie in with the whole Trunks from the future and everything, like I think it's brilliant.
I spoke of the merits that his loose, make it up as he goes along type approach offered him with the likes of Raditz, and while that imprecise flexibility offered him room to carefully maneuver his narrative here, it too created some unusual and difficult problems that he needed to solve, on the fly no less. With hindsight and behind the scenes knowledge, it's of course easier for us to detect the course corrections, but after having reread this material for the purposes of this review with all of that in mind, I have to say I was blown away by Toriyama's ability to pivot certain aspects of the story in ways that both reinforce the ongoing narrative and feel natural. And
Yeah,
what's
it did.
more is, I think I
Yeah, nothing felt forced in the change of the direction, did it? It's like it was as if it was always meant to be.
knows a few things that could have been indicators of where the story may have been going had he been left alone to pursue his initial vision. A vision that is, as of yet, totally uninterrupted. And speaking of, there's something rather spooky and innately interesting about the android's impending invasion here. We have so little information about them
we don't
other
know
than the
anything, do
bleak
we?
picture that Trunks described of his future. A massive component of the early Frieza material concerned the Earthlings using their ability to sense ki to gain the advantage over their enemies. But for this arc, that concept is sort of flipped onto its head
how
as
do you
the
sense
androids are not
androids,
capable of being sensed at all, creating a very unique scene where both the audience reading along and the heroes of Earth, after Yajirobe's exit, experience a genuinely shocking occurrence. This was one of the few times this story genuinely created a sense of unease within me. The likes of Goku, Gohan, Piccolo, these guys don't get surprised in this way often, or at
They're
all,
spooked.
really.
They are
And after waiting
spooked.
all of this time to see these androids, hoping to get the drop on them to gain the advantage
And then
that
it's like,
Trunks
wait,
was
how
hoping
do we?
for to
Yeah.
avoid that future, it seems they've already turned the tables on our heroes. Seeing those anonymous dots of the androids descend onto the unassuming town below, it's truly unsettling, and it only gets uglier from this point forward.
Yo. Mate, that cut. Whoa.
Introductions are important to Akira Toriyama. He uses them as a vehicle to communicate the central elements of the characters as they debut. For Nappa, he acted with tremendous cruelty and power, but he too was reckless, pointed out by Vegeta alongside numerous other instances where he clearly demonstrated an elite level of observation and strategic prowess. For Frieza, the tone was entirely different. Frieza enjoyed playing with his victims, watching them squirm as if he were a cat and they were his food. There's a sadistic nature to his introduction that drives home just how twisted and cruel Frieza is.
Yeah.
However, with the androids, it almost feels empty, terrifyingly so. They dispatch people not to prove a point, not to announce
But
their
just
presence, or to
'cause.
even play with the fear they see in others. They are simply moving through people, striking them down, in the same way a person walking down the street dispassionately steps on some ants. There's a troubling, almost horror-like aura to this introduction, and one that is emphasized when Yamcha
Yeah, man.
steps in to stop
Obviously,
the
Yamcha
man.
had to take the hit here. It's brutal. This is so brutal. Fwah!
I just love how this is depicted in both the anime and the manga.
God
It
damn.
is so dramatic, so horrifying, so sudden. And while this all leads to the gang converging on this location lickety-split, my favorite part of this section has to be the subtle foreshadowing hinting towards Goku's physical state, his heart virus. Evidence of this surfaces in the story long before his eventual tango with Android 19, however, and even before he turns Super Saiyan. The very first time I noticed this illness impacting Goku came about even before he arrived on the scene to make the save on Yamcha.
Okay.
Android 20 and 19 have been looking for Goku to get their revenge on behalf of the Red Ribbon Army, but Goku isn't feeling as amazing as he otherwise looked
All the
during
sweat
his
and breathing,
demonstration
yeah.
against Trunks. Little droplets of sweat begin to appear after virtually no effort or exertion on the Saiyan. A status that only cascades from bad to terrible as he stands across the battlefield from the terrifyingly cartoonish Android 19, igniting his explosive
Let's
transformation
go.
from Saiyan legend right out the gate as both he and 19 are engulfed in his golden glow. And again, much the same way my attention was drawn to Goku during the androids' introduction, despite the explosive battle that's about to take place between Goku and 19, my attention this time found anchorage amidst the insight Piccolo offers this worsening situation and the point of view Akira Toriyama purposefully depicts all of this from. And so, here we finally are.
Let's
the battle
kick it
between
off.
Goku and the androids commences. One that Trunks set up as the destination for this story. And what's more is, by virtue of Goku making it to this battlefield, we've already successfully changed history. Or so we think.
Yeah.
And get used to saying that, because one thing this arc does exceptionally well early on is keep us as an audience off balance and asking questions.
Hell yes,
and
it
here
does.
is honestly no different. For as soon as Goku erupts into battle, stunning the likes of Ten Shinhan and even the androids themselves with his immense Super Saiyan power, as we bask in that moment, Piccolo quickly brings to our attention something very telling. Pensively watching on, he makes note that Goku, quite uncharacteristically, started this fight at 100%.
Yeah.
Goku never
Nope.
does this. He always leaves something in reserve because to Goku, this is supposed to be fun. He never wants to rush to the end if he can help it, which means Goku, despite only having just started and clearly dominating this fight, isn't having fun up there. And
Yeah, man. That's just not him. And it's like, whoa. Slowly you start realizing, oh no.
what's more is, as time takes on by, it starts to appear as though Goku
He's
is fighting for
struggling.
every single breath. At this point in the story, the cause of Goku's fatigue is actually rather ambiguous and mysterious, though we may take that for granted nowadays as many of us have the benefit of hindsight. There is obviously the looming thought of the proposed heart virus at play, but we know Goku has already been given the medicine for that, and what's more is, we have the currently unknown element of the android's supposed power draining abilities. Yamcha believes it may be through their hands, but we really have no idea at this point, so as Goku continues to get worse and worse, with Piccolo and co speculating on it all, we are left as readers to speculate ourselves about what in the world is happening to Goku. This fight and how it's presented to us, by the way, is pure cinema in the most subtle of ways, because the way this fight is framed from the get-go forces me as a reader to feel fundamentally off balance compared to every single other Goku fight in the series. As alluded to earlier, this story tells us time and again how important Goku is, how he's central to the story. For instance, Trunks comes back in time specifically to save who? Goku. Android 20, otherwise known as Dr. Gero, states that they are specifically after who?
Goku.
Again. He's the focus like he has been in previous story arcs, only within this fight, unlike every other which enjoyed some verbal jousting, strategy, and a more personal point of view within the fight themselves, we see none of this from the perspective of Goku himself. In fact, we're taken completely out of it, which as a reader creates this bizarre sense of unease as the fight trudges towards an inevitable outcome. Instead of enjoying the fight from the point of view of Goku like we normally would, this fight has our attention squarely on the reactions of his
Everyone,
allies
yeah,
and
yeah.
enemies, as they slowly notice that something is happening to Goku and react in terrified, or in the case of Piccolo, strategic ways. As a whole, this fight is a wonderfully executed swerve that leads ultimately into a fight that showcases an exceptionally powerful swerve.
知りたいもんだ。貴様ら人造人間でも恐怖に怯えるのかどうか。
I love the way they're editing all these bits, the cuts and the music and everything. So sick.
Vegeta versus Android 19.
Hey,
this is,
yeah,
for many Vegeta fans, one of the most cathartic and fulfilling fights he gets to enjoy for the majority of the series. And that out-of-the-loop feeling we felt in the other fight with Goku is now entirely replaced with a very familiar and comfortable beatdown that we get to experience firsthand alongside the returning and triumphant Saiyan Prince, Vegeta, as he lays verbal barbs and thunderously heavy attacks with a smile against this cheap toy.
He loves it.
Despite the praise Super Vegeta eventually receives, and despite the epic battle between a Super Saiyan Vegeta and Android 19 here, Vegeta as a character is, I think, critically underappreciated as one of the central stories told in this arc. Not because he doesn't have his fans, he definitely does. Tons of them.
Right
but
here.
More so because I think a lot of people don't fully appreciate the depth of the story that Vegeta enjoys in this arc. A story that if we were to go without it, the fight itself that caps off this arc would have finished a very, very different way. While Goku was firmly in the spotlight, Vegeta had largely disappeared in this lead up to the android threat. And now, in true Vegeta fashion, he makes his presence thunderously felt.
Oh, yeah.
Not only derailing Piccolo's frankly absurdly brilliant fake-out to get the drop on the androids, but also making the save on our central point of interest, Goku. Appearing as a Super Saiyan for the very first time in his own right, Vegeta claims to have pushed himself to the point of self-hatred when suddenly it happened. The golden glow of the Super Saiyan erupted from deep within the prince, once again reclaiming his throne. And so, in the interest of keeping Vegeta's story at the forefront of our minds when we look at this exceptionally cathartic and fun fight between him and Android 19, we should also keep the broader context of the story in mind. For instance, and generally at the beginning of story arcs, there's typically a mission statement or broad set of themes established that the entire arc adheres to or works towards.
Yeah, so we know what the goals are and where the story is gonna start heading.
In the case of the Saiyan saga, it was rather explicit. Raditz represented the ideology Goku would need to prove himself against using what he learned instead of what he was told he was. However, in this arc, there's a very interesting interaction between Goku and Vegeta that takes place once they reunite following Frieza and Trunks' battle. One that says a lot about the journey Vegeta's character goes on in this arc and the role Goku will play in that. It's honestly fantastic. Vegeta says, "Don't think you don't need us just because you became a Super Saiyan. I will beat you sooner or later. I will prove again that I'm the strongest of the Saiyans."
Again.
And to that, Goku simply responds, "Whatever." God, I love that. It's subtle, but I love it because I don't think you could find a more succinct and complete example of what Goku and Vegeta stand for in this series. And hilariously, Vegeta still doesn't see that Goku has zero interest in being the strongest. The fact that Vegeta's managed to sense ki or train in the same way Goku did may show a respect for things that have worked for others in the past, but it's other people he wants to be better than, and this interaction highlights a fundamental flaw in Vegeta's approach, I think. His inability to cooperate with others, to work as part of a team towards a greater goal, always choosing to train alone. And so, while we look on and rightfully enjoy this incredible beatdown between 19 and Vegeta, Toriyama is intentionally giving Vegeta everything he wants here. He's the strongest once again, and he achieved this through his own tried and true methodology. His grit, his hatred, and his ruthless determination to achieve his goals has led him to the promised land once again. And oh, it feels good.
やつに随分とエネルギーを吸い取られちまったぜ。俺を倒すなら今がチャンスだぞ。
Vegeta's bluff right here is perhaps one of my favorite panels from the manga. There's so much subtle depth to this character and the strategy at play here that it just melts my brain. In more ways than one, this is Vegeta at the peak of his powers. He's loving every single second, and much the same way he was able to navigate the Namek material, here too he's able to leverage his cunning and psychological experience in combat to gain an advantage whenever and wherever he can. And this moment was exactly that. A bluff, a moment where Vegeta defeats Android 20 in psychological warfare. Vegeta is a genius, but he's not perfect.
Oof.
やはり遅かったか。悟空さんたちも人造人間もどこにもいない。島は無茶苦茶。一体どうなったんだ。
For those that are familiar with the behind-the-scenes workflow of Akira Toriyama and his editors, this arc in particular has a certain reputation. A reputation for being somewhat disjointed or at the very least meddled with early on, forcing Toriyama to constantly pivot the story's focus at the whim of his current editor, Kondo Yu. And while his editor is undeniably and factually the reason we get the likes of Android 17 and 18 later, as well as Cell himself eventually, I think the major thing that goes underappreciated here is just how beautifully and almost seamlessly Toriyama weaves these narrative pivots together.
Yeah,
What
it's
could
very
easily have been
impressive.
an arc that felt fragmented and unfocused is instead arguably Toriyama at his most unstoppable. By the time this arc rolls around, Toriyama's writing style has gone from scatting along with the story, doing his best to keep up with his own ideas, to completely mastering the free-form jazz approach here. It's like watching
Freeform
Miles
jazz,
Davis
love it.
up on stage, taking every possible new direction with infinite nuance and poise, both with the upcoming editor-driven swerves, as well as his own personal ideas for this arc. Nothing goes unaccounted for in advance. Though it may be subtle, this arc is filled to the brim with discrete setups and payoffs, small key moments that establish some unstable elements and then pay off or resolve them much later down the line. One of the earliest instances that caught my eye in particular was this stray line from Vegeta regarding his Super Saiyan transformation. In it, he says, "I forgot to mention, when I become a Super Saiyan, my ferocity increases too. We enter a certain ecstatic state, you see." Between this line and how they are portrayed even as early as Goku versus Frieza, there's a very specific quirk to Super Saiyan that Toriyama seemingly always had in mind for this transformation. The fact that Super Saiyan not only makes you a bit more ruthless in personality, but subsequently that ferocity leads to a very different pace of fight. Though the anime would drag these out, every single fight featuring a Super Saiyan in this arc is remarkably short.
Oh, okay.
They are not belabored affairs with the usual progression we were accustomed to, but rather extremely quick and volatile exchanges. This element is brought back into focus later on with the likes of Goku and Vegeta seeking out an evolution to the form, all the way to the Sun family's strategy of mastering Super Saiyan for the Cell games. These sorts of long play elements and foreshadowing are something that were usually fairly sparse in Toriyama's stories, but this arc is just absolutely jam-packed with them. It's incredible how cohesive and thought out it all feels, despite our knowledge of the editor's perpetual influence. With that said, however, as Android 20 tried and failed to make his getaway from the forces of Earth, because I had these specific story pivots fresh in my mind to watch out for while I read along, I became fixated on trying to figure out what direction the story might have gone in had Toriyama been left to his devices.
Yeah, interesting. Like, was 19 meant to be destroyed when 19 was destroyed? Was 20 meant to be on his own? Like,
With the story he had planned. And honestly, I think I stumbled across something that might be a relic of a plot thread that ultimately never went anywhere because of all the constant changes to it. After Gohan makes the save on Piccolo, who later goes on to totally wreck Android 20, by the way, seriously, that knee to the face was cold as fuck. Gohan was sent away from the action, and that's when something occurred to me.
theory time.
While Android 20 feels markedly weaker and much less of a big deal than he otherwise did upon his introduction, at this point I noticed that despite the absence of Gohan and Goku in the main party, at no point while I was reading did I feel like the main story lacked any star power. Vegeta, Piccolo, Tenshinhan, Trunks, Krillin, all of these
still quite
characters apart
stacked.
from Trunks were once antagonists in this story, and that's a cute observation, sure, but it brought to my attention something pivotal to this story. The future that Trunks himself came from.
Oh my god, Chaozu's dead! And he really let himself go. And he's an android.
If you think back to what Trunks divulged about his future, it was one ravaged by two androids, the likes of which never got to fight Goku, the likes of whom killed Vegeta, Piccolo, Shinhan, and Krillin, an encounter that only a select few survived. And who were those select few? Well, who did Piccolo send home just now before going to Jiro's lab? Bulma, Baby Trunks, Yajirobe, and to transport them all, Son Gohan. According to Trunks, Bulma himself and Gohan were the ones who survived. And if we look at Super's continuation both in the anime and the manga, who else survived? Yajirobe. No, does that count really? I don't know, I'll let you decide that. But personally, with the way the story was shaping up concerning the new androids that were to be awakened, with Goku on his deathbed, the forces of Earth about to face Trunks' future, and the cast Gohan is carrying, it's fun to consider the parallels between that very future Trunks warned us of, alongside this present day one, and the potential story Akira Toriyama was toying with before he was asked again to shift his focus elsewhere. I honestly think in a world where Toriyama saw his original plan for 19 and 20 to fruition, he may have legitimately planned on having the arc begin with the very same tragedy Trunks endured in his timeline, only for them to somehow recover from it. It's up for you guys to speculate how you think that might have unfolded, but for now, it's just a fun thought experiment.
That was interesting to see, yeah, that like Gohan's carrying them and they're the people that survived in the future, like, ha.
I won't pontificate over the likes of 17 and 18 for too long, as once again we will pivot to Cell, but before that eventually happens, I do want to draw attention to an interesting aspect of their characterization and a plot thread that was potentially, again, left abandoned. As Trunks has pointed out, the timeline's events have changed considerably to his own. Not only were the androids that appeared near South City very different to what he predicted, and not only were Goku's heart virus issues delayed, but the personalities of 17 and 18 seem to have been altered too. At no point does 17, 18, or even 16 declare that they, quote, wanted to kill Goku, but instead that they were designed to kill him, or that they were looking to defeat him. Apart from the very obvious undertones of freedom and free will being a key theme that follows these two tragic characters, something 17 said in passing when he noted the differences between himself and Android 16, they caught my eye. He wondered why Dr. Gero went back to kidnapping children for human-based android experimentation following the success that was Android 16, an entirely mechanical fighter. It's a very interesting question for him to ask, and one that isn't explored or answered at all in this story, unfortunately.
Oh my god. Expectations versus reality, man. This really does slap Vegeta hard.
Vegeta versus Android 18.
God.
Following his dominant display against the likes of Android 19, Vegeta finds himself once again with his authority and presence challenged. But I think most importantly what hurts Vegeta is that despite having left the story almost entirely, Android 16, 17, and 18 cite Goku as their primary target. A factual revelation that exposes Vegeta's greatest weakness and establishes the journey his character will ultimately undergo in this very arc. And that journey is one of self-acceptance and humility, to on some level confront his own insecurities. And in the prelude, as well as within some elements of this very fight, it echoes many of the characteristics the prior contest between himself and Android 19 boasted so explicitly. Vegeta is loving life, talking trash, and sitting in his mind comfortably atop the totem pole as the strongest warrior in the universe. There's no chance he could be bested by anyone. Not by his son, not by these androids, and certainly not by Kakarot. And this aspect of his character is, on some level, admirable. For a lot of people, I'm sure, this Vegeta we get in this arc acts as a symbol for hard work in the series. Throwing himself into impossibly rough situations to push himself to his physical limits, sacrificing years of his life in the name of becoming the absolute strongest. However, there's a fundamental flaw with his approach, and more than that, for me, he's never really represented what true hard work means. Or at least, not as much as many might suggest he does in this arc anyway. And that's because, in this material, despite destroying himself physically, he always seems to choose to stay well within his comfort zone. You gotta remember, isolating himself from others, training rigorously, resolutely, pushing himself in the same way he always has. It's strenuous training, yes, but this is an approach well within his comfort zone. He so desperately wants to be the leader, so desperately wants to be the strongest, the alpha of the group, that he always stands above all. But the truth is that not everyone can be the leader, not everyone can be the strongest, and not everyone wants to be either. For the likes of Goku, who always seems to have his eyes fixated on the horizon, preparing for the possibility of someone else coming around the next corner that's even better, even stronger, for Vegeta, this very idea, this notion that he's the strongest in the universe, is the chink in his armor that leaves him open to attack.
Mate, just pause there. That is absolute brutal.
Denying help, denying the reality that stands right before him, Vegeta would rather die than accept help from someone else to challenge himself emotionally to accept that he is wrong. And quite fittingly, it's Trunks, Vegeta's son, that offers an interesting angle to view his character from. And that angle is a point of view of the Saiyan Prince we've not yet seen. In the past, we've heard Vegeta described as sinister, evil, chaotic, ruthless, or driven at best.
All those
But
things.
lonely is a descriptor I've only heard Trunks echo. And it's such a fascinating interpretation of this character
It makes you wonder what Bulma said to him about Vegeta.
we've not yet explored. While not demonstrated to us directly, we can tell that Trunks had, prior to his arrival on this timeline, certain expectations of his father. Expectations that the actual Vegeta failed to live up to in the most basic of ways. Expectations that, while we haven't seen their roots, clearly stem from his mother, Bulma, who earlier in this very story, Vegeta chose not to save when Android 20 attacked her plane in an effort to distract them. Because again, sentiment isn't something that ever concerns the likes
Vegeta
of
never
Vegeta.
does it, no.
How lonely that must be. But Trunks doesn't operate that way. Trunks wanted to save his mother, and he did. And true to his character, despite his disillusionment in his own father, he wants to save him too.
As well, yeah.
But as has been the story for Trunks' entire life, he just can't save him.
It's like, it's so tragic, man. Trunks' whole thing is so tragic.
Truly, and in every sense of the word, Trunks is the perfect catalyst to expose all of Vegeta's issues here. He warns them all against fighting the androids and allowing them to be activated. He warns them all about the importance of waiting for Son Goku to help. Vegeta doesn't take heed, however, refusing to take the lead from anyone. He said it himself, quote, "I need no one." But it's so clear that he does. In more ways than one, he needs people. He just can't admit it. This is where things go from bad to worse to curiously odd. Vegeta crumbles following his final arm breaking, compelling Trunks to try and fail to make the save here. But it's not just these two who fall. Everyone does. With Krillin frozen from fear as a notable exception, clearly the least equipped to deal with what's transpired, with Piccolo and the two Super Saiyans having fallen easily before his eyes, he's unable to bring himself to even
What are you gonna
move
do?
out of line
What are you
an
gonna do?
inch. And again, while reading this, I was taken aback by how reasonable it would have been for readers to assume that history was heading in the same direction as it had for Trunks' timeline.
Yeah.
All the pieces are in place. The medicine might be ineffective, leading Goku and Yamcha to die. Everyone on the battlefield could perish to the androids, and all who'd remain would be Gohan and his passengers en route to his house. But that doesn't happen. Instead, 17, 18, and 16 all consciously decide to leave everyone live. And more than that, in fact, there's an argument to be made that if Vegeta wasn't leading the charge here, a fight might not even have taken place.
There we go.
This interaction between Piccolo and Kami feels special. It's the first time they've spoken since the 23rd Tenkaichi Budokai, which didn't go all too great, by the way. And to tell you the truth, I love the subtle undertones of Toriyama's character writing here. It's clear why Piccolo is there, and what's more is, it's clear that Piccolo isn't the same as his father, something Kami even himself acknowledges right away. And with that acknowledgement, there's a palpable sadness in Kami's demeanor. A lot of people rightfully appreciate this scene as one of the most significant moments in Piccolo's life. A moment that marks the final chapter of Piccolo's character arc, closing the book on a story which saw these two separate and fight for an entire age. And while that is fantastic and worthy of praise in and of itself, what I loved about this scene can be observed through a specific line of dialogue that was shared. After being confronted by the grim reality that they are facing, Kami is forced to acknowledge his own limitations. How he, the guardian of Earth, its protector, can no longer stand watch over it or protect it. For not even the comparatively bottomless power of Trunks, Vegeta, or even Son Goku can stand up to this new threat. To which Piccolo reaffirms quite simply, that's right. What the Earth needs now isn't a god, it needs me, with power enough to defeat them.
Damn.
Kami does go on to wait a little while longer, passively holding out in hope that the actions of the androids have come about due to provocation and not their own desires for conflict. But despite this holdout for another alternative, for a passive solution, a holdout for something or someone to stop this from taking place, Kami agrees to surrender himself to Piccolo, to become one. For me, it's honestly impossible not to see the parallels here between this moment and the climax of this arc. A bittersweet moment of reconciliation and submission, an acquiescing of one's ideals, a relinquishing of control, all in the name of the greater good. And truthfully, this is about as close as Toriyama gets to showing the cracks of what he's dealing with behind the scenes. Piccolo arrives and waits on the lookout for God knows how long. Shinhan goes to check on Chaozu. Krillin shifts the location of Goku and company away from his home. It's clear with the benefit of hindsight that Toriyama was trying to figure out what his next move should be, or at the very least, was trying to put the various pieces of this puzzle in place for the next phase. This would normally bother me, but truthfully, looking at this material today, he handles it amazingly well.
間違いない。これは俺が乗ってきたタイムマシンそのものだ。一体どういうことなんだ?
Throughout this arc so far, the entire narrative has been consistently evolving with a feeling of instability and unease. Frieza arrives,
lot of confusion.
But Trunks negates it. Androids arrive, but are flukes that lead to 17 and 18. But even then, there's a sort of directional mystery with these androids, as they don't seem particularly married to the idea of evil destruction or even necessarily killing Goku or anyone for that matter. All of that instability and mystery comes folding in on itself, however, with this one reveal. It's magnificently done, shoving yet another mystery into the mix. The second time machine feels purposely out of left field and unnerving. Pretty much every twist and turn we've been on so far has felt like a natural progression of events, but this time machine, it doesn't fit at all. Like a chess piece suddenly appearing on a checkers board, and it doesn't take long before it is very apparent that this is, in fact, the single most important piece in the entire story so far. Between the reveal of the giant cicada-looking shell on the ground, Trunks' utter befuddlement at the impossibility of it all, and most importantly, Kami immediately agreeing to fuse with Piccolo when this development comes to his attention. Everything.
Yeah, we suddenly get this great sense of urgency of what else is going on. I mean, we've already had this change, we've got these happening. Wow, we got the time machine, and then Kami like, whoa, okay, yeah, there's something out there that we need to like deal with. It's like, okay, what's going on now?
Is instantly brought into focus. It's hard to overstate how unnerving and disruptive this reveal feels. The power of the androids already seemed insurmountable, absolutely trouncing the current strongest character with only one combatant. But they were a known entity. In fact, now that I think of it, there aren't really any major villains in Dragon Ball that are revealed as such an unknown as Cell.
Yeah, man. Cell's
Vegeta
intro.
was warned about by Raditz. The heroes were warned of Frieza long before his debut, and even Demon King Piccolo was known by Roshi as he returned. But there is absolutely nothing we know about this new creature at this very moment. What does a giant shell have to do with a time machine?
Yeah.
Why has it been here for nearly a year before Trunks originally arrived to stop Frieza? Why is its mere presence, even as a larva, so unnerving that it has thrown Kami
getting
off
chills.
for years? How is there even a second identical time machine to begin with? Though all of these questions will be answered in due time, it is the introduction of those questions that sells this mystery and acts as the catalyst for the second act of this story as Kami and Piccolo reunite after centuries of separation and rush to the site of distress mere miles from where the time machine was found.
Mate, Cell's introduction. So creepy. You wanna drink this guy? You wanna watch me drink this guy? Yeah. What is
This reveal
that?
is unlike anything we've ever seen in Dragon Ball. Almost like a rat or snake that has been hiding under our collective noses, a series of creepy news broadcasts in the manga reveal the curious events surrounding a place called Ginger Town. And while it's immensely effective, I think the cinematic approach Toriyama was trying to go for was limited by the medium he was telling his story through. I'm an avid lover of manga, as many of you know, and stand by it as my preferred medium to digest stories in. But even I cannot deny the cinematic masterpiece
Oh, the anime
that
do
is
it so
Cell's
well.
anime introduction. Slow-moving shadows, found footage, stray articles of clothing strewn suspiciously all around, and random items tossed across our screens
It's very
by the
horror-esque,
eerie
isn't it?
breeze
Yeah.
of the wind. All the while, we hear footsteps echo in the deafening silence. It's terrifyingly effective, bringing to life a sinister atmosphere, the likes of which we've never seen in this story before. And this, my friends, is Akira Toriyama's introduction of Cell. Piccolo versus Cell.
Yo.
This fight between Piccolo and Cell is one steeped in mystery with an intense atmosphere. And quite wonderfully, as soon as Cell opens his mouth, as audience members, our list of questions only seems to grow.
Mate, when he puts his hands together and starts doing the Kamehameha, it's like, what is going on?
How does he talk? I thought he was an animal. How does he know who Piccolo is and his history? Why does his energy feel like everyone? All of this, coupled with the intensely graphic methodology he uses to absorb a helpless citizen, creates this enormous question mark over Cell and his origins.
Fight's so
Does
sick
it?
as well.
As it happens, we have already received a subtle indication of where this creature has come from. If we cast our minds back, we know that Dr. Gero has been gathering data on all of the greatest warriors to ever fight on Earth. Energy that seems to be infused with and matches the energy emitted by this Cell. It's subtle, but it's a beautiful foreshadowed introduction of where he comes from, and just goes to further show how brilliantly Toriyama manages to take seeds from previous chapters and utilize them to their fullest regardless of what direction the story is taking. And honestly, despite this fight having some of the best full-page spreads in the manga, it's not the action that makes up the focus of this battle, but instead the exposition.
最後の質問だ。貴様がわざわざ未来から来た理由は何だ。私が完全体になるには人間どもの生体エキスの吸収だけでは足りないのだ。
This is an inspired narrative choice made by Akira Toriyama, I think. At this present time, due to the constant changes to his initial plan, Toriyama is in a position where he needs Cell to divulge his plan and exposition to us so that we can finally leave this establishment section
it's
of
like,
the story.
come on,
And to
what's
achieve this,
actually
Toriyama
going on?
leverages two narrative elements at his disposal: Cell's surprise factor and Piccolo's strategic brilliance. Piccolo, once again, faking an injury to get the drop on his opponent. This time, it actually gets the chance to work, and to great effect. Cell, much like Vegeta and Frieza would, decides to gloat and spill the beans on his background, granting both Piccolo and us by proxy at home the necessary insight and exposition through internally consistent strategy.
It's like, oh my god.
All the while creating a purpose for the rogue androids to fulfill narratively. A narrative purpose that ironically robs them of their own purpose. It should also be noted that as a backup story for these androids to explore, a path that forces them to once again be part of someone else's plan is compelling and rather perfect, turning them, forcing them once more to be nothing more than another's puppet, lacking autonomy and a basic level of freedom. In other words, Cell wants nothing more than to strip the meaning from their lives away for the sake of his own selfish quest for perfection and power. Remind you of anyone? In the end, this fight exists purely for exposition and to alert the likes of Cell to the powers the Earthlings possess. In a way, it's a confrontation that approaches a similar problem Toriyama was faced with during the Namek material where Krillin and Gohan were almost discovered by Vegeta. Only in this scene, I think everything is logically consistent and held together with reasonable...
It's not just some mad wail out of nowhere, just be like, "Wah!" It's like, oh god, distraction.
Precaution and cunning strategy, and not luck. So yeah, I love this scene. And from this point on, the plot that was once shrouded in mystery and curiosity focuses itself tremendously, narrowing in on the main through line, forcing the themes and ideas that were once offered up as breadcrumbs thus far to take shape and establish for us a clear path forward. A path that has taken the obvious shape of stop Cell from absorbing the androids at all costs. However, for me, there's always been so much more to this story than simply this surface level observation. After waking, as he looks out of his window trying to make sense of a world that has changed so much since he was last conscious, Goku's first words are heartwarming. They are directed to Chi-Chi. He says, "Chi-Chi, sorry I worried you. I'm all better now."
Bless.
Despite the chaos that has raged since he fell to Android 19, Goku still finds time to consider the feelings of those he loves. And in that moment, we're reminded of what Goku is. He's our anchor, someone we can rely on, that no matter what's taking place, Goku will, unlike others, be able to keep his head, and more than that, formulate a plan of action.
たった一日で1年分の修行ができる部屋が神様んちの神殿にあんだ。
本当か？
ああ。
Interested.
ついてこいよ。別にオラと一緒に修行しよってんじゃねえから。
This is one of the most seismic moments in the entire series, and I'm willing to wager, not for the reasons many of you are considering right now at this very moment. And I say that because, despite it being such a pivotal and considerable shift in the narrative direction of the story, it's also one of the most subtle. A little after this, the androids arrive looking for Goku, and seizing this moment, Piccolo challenges 17 to a fight. And following that, they disperse, leaving Krillin and Ten Shinhan behind at Roshi's. Krillin then goes to retrieve the new remote developed by Bulma, and Ten Shinhan rushes to the battlefield where Piccolo is. There's a ton of moving parts here, but my attention fell squarely on this one small panel where Roshi shared with us something he has clearly been thinking about for a long time. Having watched Goku pick himself up and formulate a plan of action, having seen Krillin's courage and Ten Shinhan's desire to contribute in any way he can, Roshi, in a quiet moment of self-reflection, utters to himself, "Hard to imagine days where I was the strongest in the world." And within the context of the story, I think this one line from Roshi speaks to the mindset Akira Toriyama was in at this time. For those that haven't read or watched the early Dragon Ball material, this will likely mean nothing to you, but for me, it forced me to recall the beginning of this story. The 21st Tenkaichi Budokai is the second arc of this long story, and to this day remains one of the most unique in its narrative approach. Because despite the story centering itself around a tournament to crown the, quote, strongest under the heavens, the tale itself is not about winning, but instead the lessons one stands to learn from losing, and the efforts and lengths the ones with great power must go to ensure those lessons are passed down to those with the most potential. There are several instances in early Dragon Ball where Roshi has the likes of Goku, Krillin, and even Ten Shinhan pegged as his successors, the next generation to defend the Earth from catastrophe. And looking at all of these pupils coming together to protect against something he couldn't possibly protect against, I can't imagine how vindicated he must feel in that moment, in that panel. And I draw attention to this because I think it serves as a subtle indicator on the role Goku will soon play in this story. A role he will soon find himself within. Ever since Goku's return to Earth after Frieza, something has felt off. And with his fall to the likes of Android 19, now waking up to a brand new set of circumstances in the home that helped shape him as a martial artist, Goku's priorities have realigned. And through subtle character work here, as Goku suggests the ruling spirit in time, Toriyama is laying the groundwork for a transition of power, a transition of focus, a transition of responsibility, for this is the very moment Goku was no longer the main character of Dragon Ball. And there's evidence for this all over the text.
悟空さんが気分が悪くなって1ヶ月も持たなかったってこういうことなのか。
なるほど。これでいい。
However, while this training goes unseen, another fight starts to get underway.
Hey, can Goku come out and die?
Hell yeah, I love how he's using the Team 4-star clips.
Science has no solicitors!
This fight is so freaking good. Hell yes, hell yes, hell yes. This fight is one of the best fights. Dragon Ball Z, man. This is one of the best fights. The choreography, the genius, the planning, the cunning. Oh.
Goku and Gohan are forced to sit on the sidelines as another brutal encounter rages on below. But for now, the strongest in the universe isn't Goku, Gohan, Trunks, or even Vegeta. It's the Namekian warrior staring down a couple of brazen androids. A super Namekian who right now has a chance to turn the tides on the elusive and evasive Cell. In other words, he has a chance to save the world. As fights in this series go, despite my enjoyment of it, outside of a few cool moments, it primarily serves one purpose: to act as a homing beacon to help bring Cell and the androids together. For the longest time, while everyone else was scrambling, Piccolo was trying desperately to catch up to Cell before he absorbed more people. Having reunited with Kami for the sole purpose of saving the Earth from Cell, with each passing day he was unable to dispose of this creature, more people would fall victim to his attacks. And with no Dragon Balls to wish them back to life, now that Kami has been assimilated into Piccolo, the stakes have never been higher.
They are quite
In the broader
high.
context of this series, this is Piccolo's swan song, a lost Namekian that once upon a time purged himself of the darkness humanity infected him with, now finds himself standing as the sole protector of Earth, a planet he once tried to rule over, to enslave and destroy. This one-time villain of villains has decided to reconcile his differences with his other half, reuniting in a final gambit to save the planet he was once so feverishly desperate to dominate. It's an easy thing to forget during this battle with all of its flashy moves and sudden shock appearances, but I think this is genuinely a wonderful moment for Piccolo too. 17's characterization in this arc is great also. He's very much, in every sense of the word, a teen rebelling against the system that designed him, that robbed him of everything, made obvious by his consistent refusal to believe anyone is more powerful than he. However,
it's got a cool name as
this,
well.
there's always a certain consideration in the background of his actions, like choosing to spare everyone after their first initial encounter when he really didn't need to. No one was going to or could stop him if he so chose. But he didn't. And even within this fight, he asks to move the action to a more remote location in order to protect the environment. These are things villains do not say.
They do
and
not.
once Cell makes his presence felt, that unsure youth dwelling within 17 made itself known, immediately shifting to Piccolo's side for security.
お前が完全体になるのを阻止するには息の根を止めるしかないということか。
16 is a curious case.
Very
There's
much
clearly
so.
an entire story concerning him that largely went unexplored that I will get into later.
Yeah, because we don't get told anything about him whatsoever. It's just like, future's changed, so we've got another android here, and he's tagging along. And then it's like, yeah, he's quite strong.
However, While I was watching this all unfold for the first time back in the day, I really couldn't get a read on this character. However, now I think, through his actions and inaction, a much clearer picture is drawn. Outright refusing to do harm to anyone prior, showing no interest in anything other than the light-hearted actions of 17, 18, and some wildlife. And the first time he actually steps in to fight anyone is against Cell. And why? To protect his friends. Friends he had been watching and understood as good people. Quote, "I liked you two. You never killed without reason." The action with Android 16 in this section is tremendous. Everything from the rocket punch, which is a fan favorite,
Rocket punch.
all the way to the detachable arms that reveal cannons.
So
It is an
cool.
approach taken perhaps to juxtapose his quiet and demure demeanor with destructive capabilities. A convincingly human exterior with monstrous power dwelling within. However, it is that emotion in 17 that he values, that innate humanity he possesses, the teen angst and desire to rebel, that ultimately leads to 17's downfall. Because no matter how powerful he thinks he is or how free he wants to be, this story isn't his.
Nope.
And in a world with Cell, personal autonomy and free will are but fleeting luxuries and illusions.
お前の意志などどうでもいい。吸収されることはもう決まっているのだ。
What a perfect, oppressive, and dominating line for Cell to utter to 17. Right before he strips the young android of everything he holds dear, no less. Piccolo has failed. Android 16 has failed. The force of nature that is Cell very much feels like an inevitability here. An entity that has leapfrogged over everyone around him in strength multiple times over before even his first transformation. This is a pivotal point in the story. A moment in time that all but erases Piccolo from the narrative, ensures the androids can do nothing except run, and for the likes of Goku and Gohan, all they can do is sit and watch.
Wait, yeah,
And
man.
yeah, that's right. Even for the likes of Goku, a character that seemed to always have an answer for everything, he knows it's useless. It's a dynamic we never see from him. He was always down to dive headfirst into even the most impossible odds, ready to face Frieza even when he wasn't much stronger than Ginyu. But here, he is so outgunned that he knows even he shouldn't try. However, there is still one ruffle to the story that Cell didn't account for, an attribute of the Earth's forces that was once on display for all to see during the Saiyan invasion, and that attribute is the indomitable strength and tenacity of Earthlings to push past their limits and risk their lives to struggle against.
This moment was
a
so
tremendous
cool
evil.
because you had no clue what was going to happen. And when it happened, it was like, oh my god, it just keeps doing it. It's class. Yes.
I adore this scene.
Yeah, it's sick.
And I love it because it reinforces this idea that true strength can be hiding in the most unlikely of places. The Tri-Beam, Kikoho, or whatever your dub referred to this move as, is another technique from early Dragon Ball that boasts a tremendous amount of recoil on the wielder. With every subsequent shot fired at Cell, it drags Tenshinhan closer and closer to death's door. We've seen it used during the 22nd Tenkaichi Budokai and the Saiyan invasion, but there's a reason this scene in particular has such diehard fans. In a world where every human fighter has been totally outclassed,
Yeah,
to the
it's like,
point
we
of
don't need
utter
them anymore.
uselessness,
They're
present
not
at
part
the
of
original
the
fight against
roster.
androids 19 and 20 only as an act of spectatorship. It's easy to feel that the stakes have been raised such that only Saiyans or Super Namekians need
Anything
apply.
alien.
But Tenshinhan shows up here for one last ultimate push, a final self-sacrificing explosion of power, giving his literal 110% in order to keep Cell busy for just a few seconds. It very much feels like the last hurrah for humankind, and feels all the more inspirational as a result. And while inspirational and enormously impressive, this is still just a proverbial lasso Tenshinhan is forcing around Cell. Something utilized to buy time for 18 and 16 to gather themselves up and hide from this monster, and forced to look on as Piccolo's ki drops to 0 and Tenshinhan 2 heads in that very same direction, Goku reaches his wit's end and is forced to take action.
Telebot. Boop.
なんだ
How impossible do the odds feel at this present moment in time? Cell has demonstrated that he's monstrously and unfathomably powerful. And as of right now, it's only a matter of time before he can find Android 18. A person Cell will capture only because she was too selfless and couldn't abandon 16 in his current state. I did, however, make an observation during this material about the instant transmission. Introduced during the opening scene of this arc, the instant transmission is specifically designed to lock onto a key signature, thus allowing the wielder to access tremendous movement in exchange for a momentary refocusing of attention. And it looks as though this was a technique designed specifically for this arc. If we recall the original moment androids 19 and 20 made themselves known to the group, they were specifically undetectable through key sensitivity, as were 16, 17, and 18. And so I genuinely think it would have been interesting to see how Toriyama would have written a story leveraging that technique against a threat with such obvious advantages over it. At any rate, I think Toriyama's eventual use of it here is near perfect given the circumstances. Goku zooms in to save Piccolo and Shinhan, but naturally cannot take 18 out of the battle because he
doesn't know where they are.
Locate her.
Right, yeah,
But
yeah,
of
makes
course,
sense,
no development in this arc goes without its answers, without the seeds that were planted long ago sprouting. And in this case, it's been just about long enough for that room of spirit and time business to yield some results.
Hell yeah. Trunks has got cool hair.
The strained relationship between Vegeta and Trunks is one of two plot threads I'd like to explore in this section, primarily because, for me, this is the best Akira Toriyama's writing has ever been. The story of a Saiyan warrior who rejects sentimentality in the name of pride and power, and a young naive son that so desperately wants to find the humanity and bond he never got the chance to have with his own father, is one ripe for exploration and dramatic tension. And because their time in the chamber together took place entirely off-screen, it allowed Toriyama to leverage all of that uncertainty we have surrounding their relationship to great effect.
Yeah.
From the very moment
It's like,
Goku
how did
mentions
they
the
get
Room
on?
of
What did they
Spirit and
talk about?
Time
What
to
did they
Vegeta, he
do?
understands the issues that exist between him and Trunks. How Vegeta doesn't concern himself with sentimentality, and how Trunks wants nothing more than to have a father. And recognizing this, Goku offers Trunks the in he desires by telling Vegeta he has to go in with someone. However, once they do enter, they disappear entirely from the story, almost as if to instill how disconnected those who leave to train there truly are from the events that take place outside. This is all to say that we don't see their training. However, when they do eventually emerge from that room, Vegeta says nothing, but Trunks does offer a single piece of information, that within just 2 short months, Vegeta found a way to surpass Super Saiyan. To which Vegeta orders Trunks to say no
Shut
more.
up.
It seems the
Bye.
Saiyan Prince is careful not to let his rival, his next target after Cell, learn too much. And believe it or not, that short interaction, that blink and you miss it exchange between Goku, Trunks, and Vegeta offered us a sneak preview of what the future holds for Vegeta and Trunks in their battle against Cell.
Oh, mate,
As
this
I've
is so
mentioned across
sick.
this video, and will continue to do so, this story is filled with a tremendous amount of nuance and creative excellence. And in order to bring the manga, which I hold in incredibly high regard, to life, the anime had a lofty task ahead of them. And so,
That moment's so sick, just holding him up. It's like,
it's important, I think, to stop and appreciate the unsung heroes who help bring these stories we love so dearly to life. And so we return once again
Oh, is he going to do the animators in the studios and that?
to the
Cool.
trenches of Toei Animation's anime adaptation of Dragon Ball Z. And, well, I say trenches this episode because while this series sees some of its biggest positive change-ups and gains this arc, it also marks a difficult point in the production. You see, the anime was very quickly catching up to the manga, which is why there are a large number of dedicated filler episodes in this arc, let alone the entire Garlic Jr. filler arc being a thing that exists.
Mate.
At the same
I forgot about the Garlic Genie thing. That's literally like before the freeze stuff, isn't it? Isn't it? Yeah, because Goku's not there. And then
time, there are several Dragon Ball movies in production, including a TV special. The staff are
History
spread
of
crazy thin,
Trunks.
and that resulted in some fascinating change-ups and crazy tight schedules. I think it's most clear to see with the way Studio Junior's
Oh,
episodes
Krillin's
manifested at
girlfriend.
this time.
No.
With Maeda busy elsewhere, the people under him had to step into his shoes on the anime, and that truly kicks off with the Katsuyoshi Nakatsuru-led episode of Trunks' iconic fight. In spite of Nakatsuru's prominence across the series, this is in fact the second and final episode he directly supervises. And that is a real shame considering how unbelievably stunning this is. It truly feels like an elevation of the source material, like a Toriyama illustration come to life. Thanks to not only the pristine artwork, but the shading approach itself matching Toriyama's own illustrative style. That's definitely a good thing given some of the animators on this episode just straight up aren't very good at drawing Dragon Ball.
Oh no.
What's interesting, however, is that Naotoshi Shida, who was always under Uchiyama's thumb at Last House until now, is actually on this episode and animates Frieza's death, which is, oh, a sign of things to come. But more on that another time. Maeda's absence didn't just allow Nakatsuru to supervise, it also brought about the debut of Takeo Ide in the same position. With his supervisory debut in episode 129, Ide just cut loose with some of the most insane looking work. It's so distinct, super angular and aggressive in every sense of the word, and it adds some real edge to what is one hell of a Vegeta-focused episode. When he returns again later with episode 138, it's a far more low-key outing, and yet Ide shows his versatility here also. It's a shame these were his only 2 episodes in the driving seat, but he sure did continue to produce some exceptional work across the series, and went on to become a teacher
Broly.
at Toei Animation School and a pivotal part of Dragon Ball Super, no less.
Oh, okay.
The next to take the reins on Maeda's team was a name introduced in the last episode of this review series, Naoki Miyahara. While up until this point Miyahara had continued to produce great sequences in the key animator role, this jump to supervisor here was kind of mind-blowing, honestly. Not only are his corrections to the artwork seriously awesome looking, but the staff under him on this episode are true all-stars. This is a landmark of an episode, an almost best-of compilation containing some of the very best this show had to offer. Unfortunately, the one name missing here is Hisashi Iguchi, who left the series after the 64th episode mentioned in the Frieza video, but it's not all sad, as he actually went on to animate some stuff in legendary shows like Evangelion, Cowboy Bebop, and Ghost in the Shell.
Nice.
What a fucking animal.
Nice.
So, that brings us to Maeda himself, and it's not a happy story to say the least. This man was hired all the way back in the Slump era, and bless him, he really did his best as Toriyama's work began to evolve and become more angular and aggressive over time. But this arc just proved to be too much for him. Whether it were his character designs or his own corrections in his episodes, they were just severely lacking, to the point that it was extremely jarring whenever it would cut to his best key animators untouched. It was time for him to go, and with episode 164, Maeda departed the series, unfortunately taking our beloved Masaki Sato with him. All, however, was not lost, for in the wild lands of Shindo Productions, a young and ambitious Tadayoshi Yamamuro had just been promoted to animation supervisor, with previous studio head Mitsuo Shindo leaving the show entirely. Immediately, Shindo Production episodes became some of the best looking on the show. Even if Yamamuro's earliest episodes featured the biggest foreheads known to mankind.
It's big.
Still, nothing compared to Ebizawa. Don't worry, King, no one's coming for your crown. Episode 157 in particular is straight up one of the best looking episodes in Dragon Ball Z's entire catalog.
Wow.
The insane artwork, the fantastic animation and storyboarding, the
mate.
scale of this battle is just incredible, and it's clear that the showrunners recognize Yamamuro's talents, as he was given movie duties with the release of the Broly film, and his designs for it ended up being used for the TV series proper, supplementing Maeda's work, and well, the rest is for the next video. Of course, with Dragon Ball effectively losing
Do you know what?
part of a
I think that's the
substudio-
only time, because I watch like all of Mark's videos, every time he mentions the Buu arc, it's always that bright pink. I think that's the first time he's used it with like a dull kind of effect. Although I don't know if that's like Mark's doing or not, because I know he has people that edits the videos. But I just think that's interesting. That's interesting.
With the departure of Maeda and some of his team members, Toei needed to bring in some new blood, especially with the series schedule getting tighter and tighter due to the number of movies being produced.
Oh.
Introducing Studio Cockpit. The studio's addition to the series breathes new life into the series. Despite their debut episode being fairly low-key, their attention to detail was crazy impressive, turning what would usually be unremarkable scenes into ones filled with emotion. And well, by the time Cockpit got their hands on an action episode, they created arguably one of the most iconic Dragon Ball Z episodes of all time.
Cool.
The action was insanely fast, the posing and movement was incredibly modern for its time, and the artwork was so unlike anything ever seen on the series before. And when you look at where some of those key animators on the episode ended up in the future, it's really no surprise it was so goddamn good.
Cool.
It was something truly special, and this helped to firmly cement Studio Cockpit as Dragon Ball's premium sub-studio next to the likes of Seigasha. But Cockpit wasn't the only addition. Along with them came Studio Carpenter, led by Yuji Hakamada, along with a very brief appearance from a studio called Doga Kobo, who produced Dragon Ball Z's worst-looking episode by an absolute landslide. What is even going on here? These three new additions all had something in common, though.
So mad.
They all had a...
Still blows my mind that like different studios do different episodes on this. It's like, whoa, and then the standard is just so all over the place.
Chief animation supervisor overseeing their episodes. You see, in animation production, you have different stages as a key animator. You start with a loose draft called a layout, and an animation supervisor looks over it and gives you a correction. This is then turned into a cleaner version called Genga, which can also be given a correction. And up until now, that was the final stage in Z's production. It was then turned into the Doga to tie down the correction and then painted ready for filming. This came with the downside of relying entirely on the skill of the animation supervisor. So if you were like Masayuki Uchiyama, who completely shit the bed in this arc, drawing some of the worst
Jesus
ever
Christ.
see from the show and lamenting the fact Shida left him for Toei, well, that's just how it had to be released. But with a chief supervisor, they would step in after the original supervisor had done their job to provide further corrections, and that's precisely what they did for these new studios. Naoki Miyahara from Toei would step into this role for Cockpit and redraw a lot of Matsunaga's work to be far more on model. Likewise, Masahiro Shimanuki from Seigasha jumped in to prevent Doga Kobo's episode from looking like baby's first fan art and assisting Hakamada while he got used to Dragon Ball's art style. While the role would only really be used to ease in new studios to the series, it definitely helped push the quality of episodes up where they otherwise might have stood out in not the best of ways.
Okay.
It's now time to talk about the best studio on Z once again. Seigasha continues to simply dominate every episode.
Okay.
Whether it's Shimanuki or Hisada supervising, both have seriously refined their styles at this point, distilling into absolute perfection. And the animation totally matches. Shimanuki once again delivers with insane impact in vehicle work, and Hisada is out here with the most not-so-dynamic angles and poses.
Okay,
What's more is
cool.
that Naoki Tate has now developed...
I
into
like
real
as well
shining
that
stars.
like different styles and that, and the way that different people do different things, and then it's like you slowly start watching stuff and you question. I question things now. I'm like, hey, is that the guy that did thing? Like the most noticeable is the guy that does all the block explosions and stuff, and like I'm watching Black Clover, and I'm noticing that there's so many different animation styles, and I'm like, hey, that's similar to that. That's similar to that. I wonder if it's that. You know, I don't actually go and check, but it's like, you know, I think it's really interesting. Oh my god, Black Clover! I'm so glad I got back into it.
Own right, animating some sick battles throughout this arc. It's really only the old lead, Takeuchi, who stands out in not a great way. Is that a caveman? But what really makes their episodes special is the director they're often paired with. This is Kazuhito Kikuchi, and holy balls, is he an incredible talent. While his work in the Frieza arc was only okay, he very quickly developed into one of Z's finest talents.
Okay.
Directing episodes with
Continued
an
working
style
and developed
confidence
his
that rivals
trade.
Z's other
Cool.
strongest director, Yoshihiro Ueda. This man knows how to bore dynamic angles and create atmosphere. But with all of that aside, no one can compare to the legend, the director who defined a generation. This is Shigeyasu Yamauchi, Dragon Ball's best
Yamauchi.
director and an industry icon. The
Yeah.
Cell arc is a tale filled with genuine horror, and Yamauchi brings this vibe to
Right.
life in a way not even Akira Toriyama himself could dream of doing. These sequences are startlingly good, drenched in a variety of eye-catching colors and reimagined
yeah.
with captivating imagery that just completely breaks my brain every time I watch it. Every episode he directs in this arc is an almost perfect creative interpretation of its manga counterpart. Yamauchi is the master, and with the likes of Kikuchi and Ueda on the roster, the Cell arc contains some of the most consistently well-directed episodes found in the show. And that hard work is going to be rewarded as Dragon Ball sees its biggest production shakeup next week in this production deep dive. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. For this arc,
Let's
we've
focus
yet
on the
to
now.
explore the consequences of Vegeta and Trunks' time in the chamber.
Let's go. Take that!
Super Vegeta versus Cell. This is another moment that stands as a monument for many Vegeta fans to everything they love about the character. Sudden reappearances with a shiny new form against an arrogant foe.
His cockiness, his arrogance, everything, but seeing him go full ham on someone and just enjoying himself and just the mockery is just like, and then the turnaround.
He's full of bravado and a level of confidence that borders on the theatrical. There's something so very entertaining watching Vegeta contend with someone he knows he is stronger than in every conceivable measure.
Like in the creator abridged for the Dragon Ball Z abridged creator commentary for this episode that Team 4-Star did, you know, that thing, where he's like, this is the most Vegeta has ever Vegeta.
But again, keeping in mind the broader context of the story at hand here, what I loved about this Super Vegeta unveiling is its significance for Vegeta as a character and what it represents. This is Vegeta's moment to secure his victory against this monster, yes, but also to be the fighter in this series. The best, the most
bet no one
impressive,
ever was.
the strongest. And at first it seems to work. He powers up to tremendous fanfare. Cell powers up too, but it's not enough. There's even a rare instance of moment-to-moment paneling in the manga that mirrors Goku's fight against Frieza. Cell punches Vegeta in the face, Vegeta eats it and slowly raises his head back
yes.
with a smirk.
That is similar, yeah.
I guess that's all there is. Much like the Android 19 fight, this is Vegeta having the time of his life.
Yeah.
Once again, he's reaffirmed to himself that his approach is the way. And at this present moment in time, he is in fact the strongest warrior in the entire universe, which you would think at this moment would be enough to satiate Vegeta's ego, right?
絶対に負けません。パワー、スピード、技、頭脳、精神力、すべてにおいて私はパーフェクトな存在になる。
God.
間違いなく勝てるぞ。その程度ならな。
Man, if Cell wasn't part Saiyan, I'd swear he was the luckiest creature in all of creation for uttering such a perfect cocktail of words to Vegeta
Yeah, so
at
it's
this
the right
moment in
person
time.
to do it.
Perfectly timed against Krillin's own internal moral struggles concerning what right he has to take Android 18's life at the moment. Choosing to not shut her down, granting her a freedom Cell never would, but in doing so almost dooms her to that very same fate regardless. And upon reflection, there are even more attributes to this fight that share similarities between Goku's battle with Frieza on Namek, and I honestly think it's rather fitting. Allowing Cell to land the very first punch, the paneling is remarkably similar, as I said, to the beam Goku allows Frieza to land on him, but even more aptly, allowing Cell to reach 100%, so to speak. But the difference here is that if you compare Goku's fight with Frieza and his reasoning, sure, there's an element of Vegeta and Goku's makeup that's simply too curious to pass up such a chance to see what this power is like, but underneath that, Vegeta betrays his biggest flaw once again, his insecurity. Goku wanted to utterly defeat Frieza there and then at his strongest with no excuses to get revenge for Krillin, a revenge he ultimately couldn't bring himself to claim. But Vegeta is doing this to prove that he's the strongest once again, to
very
stroke his
selfish.
own ego,
Yeah.
and for no other reason.
Mate,
お前は武道の達人たちの細胞を集め、コンピュータによって培養される究極の人造人間だ。
the editing on this is just... Mark, these reviews are just boss.
私は楽しみだ。お前が完成し恐ろしいとてつもないパワーを持った最強の人造人間になること。
お前だけは地球の平和のために許しておけない。
Cool.
Countless times in this story leading up to Vegeta's time in the room, he reminds us and reaffirms to himself that Goku is still the target, that he will defeat him, best him, kill him. It seems that whenever he fails or is alone, Vegeta is consumed with thoughts of Kakarot and his rivalry with him, a one-sided rivalry that blinds the Saiyan Prince to what his actual roadblocks are. A roadblock that has now taken the shape of Cell, a creature that in this moment exists as a direct result of his faults and ego, an entity that no matter how much Vegeta puffs out his chest, he'll never be able to best. It's a terrific metaphor, one that Vegeta fights to his last breath trying to prove wrong. And in a dramatic and impressive show of force that amounts to nothing more than vanity, Vegeta ignites his most devastating attack, the Final Flash, goading Cell to take it head on, and once he does, Cell toys with the prince before smiling right into his face, shattering his perception once again, this time in a more devastating fashion than a teen did. There's a moment in this arc where Vegeta, furious after seeing everyone surpass what he once considered to be the ultimate power in the universe, the Super Saiyan, exposes his displeasure with this reality and even asks rhetorically to himself if Kakarot would agree. It's noted by Trunks moments after they both left the chamber that Vegeta didn't require a full year to surpass Super Saiyan, to find a way to break through that proverbial glass ceiling. You see, Vegeta only required 2 months and not a full year. However, the subtle implication nestled in that impressive statement is that after 2 months, Vegeta, no matter how hard he tried, hit a wall. A wall he could not overcome with torturous training alone. A wall he is faced with here once again.
Jesus. Brutal.
And as the once powerful Super Saiyan glow fades from Vegeta's now limp and unconscious body, our eyes become transfixed on the actions of one young Saiyan from the future. However, as all of this is kicking off, I'm reminded of the words of advice Goku offered Trunks right before he left for the battlefield with his father. Handing him senzu beans, Goku said, "Don't press your luck. Bail out if it gets too dangerous." Ever since this fight started to turn against Vegeta, we've been given reason to believe that Trunks has been hiding yet unseen levels of strength and power, untapped reserves he's hidden away from his father for fear it would upset him. And I don't think a single character choice better encapsulates Trunks' personality than the choice he made right here. Despite what Goku told him, despite the situation becoming dire, the young Trunks, desperate to develop a connection with the father he never had, chose instead to protect the pride of his father than to further risk worsening his already tenuous relationship with him. It's a massively reckless decision made by the young and naive son of the Saiyan Prince, and one that speaks to his character profoundly. And it is here, at this moment of reckless anticipation during the confrontation with Cell, that may very well determine the fate of the entire universe. It is here Akira Toriyama's narrative sleight of hand begins to truly reveal itself within the room of spirit and time. The Room of Spirit and Time, much like Snake Way, was a very fun visual concept that captured my imagination as a kid. This notion that our heroes could get an entire year's worth of training done in a single day just sounded fantastical to me. And once Trunks and Vegeta set foot inside, my enthusiasm and interest reached a fever pitch. What must it be like to train inside this bizarre and magical chamber, I thought. And interestingly, that's when Toriyama closed the door, and we never really got to see inside properly. We never got to see any training. Why? Firstly, I should point out that any and all footage we received in the anime of Trunks and Vegeta's training was total filler.
Right.
In the manga, all we see is the emotional impression both characters have once they enter, and then total radio silence. Right. In fact, Akira Toriyama leverages our lack of knowledge concerning Trunks and Vegeta's training to build
they mentioned
tension
that in the
outside as
creator
Goku
commentary
wonders
from
what's
Team Force,
taking
didn't
them
they?
so long. However, that wasn't the only reason we as viewers were left in the dark concerning this chamber. There was another, much more important reason. Ever since the beginning of Dragon Ball, Goku has been our rock, our safe harbor in a story full of confusing, mystical, and ever-worsening realities. And typically, in storytelling, a useful trick authors use to bond us to their main characters is this shared sense of experience, a feeling that we, as an audience, and this character, are on the same page, equally confused, equally familiar, and in the know. It
Learning
doesn't
as
always have to be this
he
way, but
learns.
it certainly helps to establish a rapport and bond with us and them. And Goku from the outset was designed with this in mind. Upon our first introduction to the story, we meet Goku, and through our brief introduction to the character, we understand him completely, but not the wider world. And having grown up in almost total isolation himself, Goku was very much in the same boat as us, and thus asked all the same questions
That
we're
we would
asking
ask.
ourselves
Yeah,
at
yeah,
home.
yeah, makes sense.
What
Cool.
are Dragon Balls? What's Capsule Corp technology? What are all of these martial arts philosophies? And through receiving these answers and growing alongside this character, we feel that much more invested and bonded to him. And while
So
he
let's learn
started
what
to feel
Goku,
different
yeah.
ever since the Saiyan saga, he and us have always been on the same page, asking all of the same questions. What is Otherworld, Snake Way, King Kai? Where is Namek? Who is Frieza? And the list goes on and on. However, in this arc, something happened. Following his defeat to Android 19, the Goku we know and love might have returned, but the dynamic we shared with him did not. Awaking on Roshi's island amidst the chaos of the plot, he looked strangely calm, almost confusingly so, because at that moment, Goku knew something we didn't. And as he uttered his plan, the Room of Spirit and Time, our shared sense of understanding only further evaporated with this character. The naive young boy that had no idea how to tell the difference between boys and girls in the beginning, the kid who was socially illiterate in the most innocent of ways, has since transformed into a much more sophisticated grown man,
Okay, yeah.
capable not just of picking up the subtleties of social situations, but leveraging his ability to navigate them effectively in order to smooth over complicated relationships. A former student that has long since graduated, looking to foster the next generation. A strong, capable warrior that knows far more about this world now than
He
even
ever
we
did,
do.
yeah.
And so, with that explanation out of the way, it should be obvious why Toriyama decided to shift Goku's character now, why he chose to keep us all in the dark concerning the Room of Spirit and Time. He kept us in the dark because Gohan was in the dark too.
Yeah.
So, for the length of this entire fight, from the moment Vegeta landed on the island in front of Cell, we have been seeing Goku and Gohan training, getting a peek behind the curtain. And while for most of Vegeta's fight, it may have seemed all but a requisite inclusion, given that Goku is, the main character, it is the surprising reveal with Trunks' fight that reveals the incredibly clever point of it all from the get-go. Cell has reached his perfect form. Vegeta is totally unconscious, and Trunks, standing between the Earth and certain destruction, sees this as a chance for him to rise to the lofty occasion, to right the wrongs of his past mistakes, to finally prove to everyone and himself that much like his father surpassing the Super Saiyan barrier, that much like Goku being the savior of Earth, and like Gohan in his timeline saving his world, he too can make a difference. But what Trunks at first saw as this magnificent opportunity for redemption, a chance to demonstrate that he's a capable warrior now, served as perhaps the most oppressive and sobering monument to his cumulative failings in this arc. And it's all made that much more effective thanks to the complementing scenes with Goku and Gohan in the room, perhaps in ways you might not ever have appreciated before.
It's too bulky, Trunks. It's too bulky.
Right before this fight begins, Trunks is exceptionally certain, evidenced through his demeanor, how he orders Krillin to take his father home and give him the last senzu bean because he won't need it. And the story does a lot to really sell us on the secret power from the get-go. Krillin himself mentions his keen sense of people's underlying powers, even if they're way out of his league, and specifically calls out Trunks as having been more prepared than Vegeta was. Between Vegeta's cockiness and the vote of sage confidence from one of the most storied martial artists in the entire cast, everything is pointing to Trunks pulling out all the stops here and maybe winning. But as the fight begins, The parallel story in the Room of Spirit and Time reveals a very different perspective. A set of cutaways that are, without question, the most narratively important, creatively rich cutaways the entire series sees.
Where Goku does it as well, but it's not effective. It's
Much like
oh,
Vegeta,
no.
Goku entered the room with a similar ambition: to surpass the Super Saiyan state and transcend his limitations. We never get to see Trunks or Vegeta attain this level, so we enthusiastically watch on wide-eyed as Goku meditates, only to then suddenly unlock Vegeta's ascended state, otherwise known as
but
Super
then we
Saiyan
learn its
Grade 2.
limitations.
But
and
even
why
more miraculously, seconds later, he transcends that again to something even more powerful: Super Saiyan Grade 3. The exact same impressive transformation Trunks is boasting
doing,
currently
and then we're
against
like,
Cell.
okay.
This moment initially feels like Goku being Goku and catching up to the likes of Trunks Grade 3 with ease. Except, on the very next page...
It's too bulky, not
Goku
fast
achieving that
enough.
form wasn't simply a game of catch-up, but a revelation of Trunks' mistake.
こんなことぐらい誰でもわかる。お前の父ベジータでもな。バカだ。お前は。
Throughout the entirety of Vegeta and Trunks' rumble with the big Bumble Cell, Goku and Gohan in the Room of Spirit and Time have acted as an, up until now, incredibly sneaky and clever parallel to the events unfolding outside
it's
of
very
the chamber.
clever, very clever.
The cutaways themselves are
start to
compelling in their own
understand
right,
the same
which
time.
helps smuggle them aboard this big reveal, but with a bit of hindsight, it's rather apparent how one-to-one these two stories unfold, consistently juxtaposed against one another. The very second Vegeta begins powering up against Cell, we are immediately interrupted with the B-plot of Gohan and Goku entering the room, and almost immediately as the two walk in, Goku makes this his mission statement. Quote, "I'm going to reach the state beyond the Super Saiyan. I'm going to be more powerful than anyone. But I want you, Gohan, to be more powerful than me." Throughout this B-plot, we see their journey largely through Gohan's eyes. Once again, the presentation of Goku has shifted. He has seemingly transcended the state of main character, the position of audience's point of view.
I have
And instead, the
transcended the
person
main
in that room
character.
who now shares the audience's level of knowledge and mystery is Gohan. And as the fight between Vegeta and Cell rages on outside, Trunks watching on as his proud father does well to even barely recognize him, each successive cutaway further drives home the difference between the two father-son approaches here. In multiple scenes during Vegeta's fight, Gohan is shown struggling to achieve Super Saiyan, struggling to live up to the expectations and goals his father has set for him, pushing himself impossibly hard to break the threshold and become a useful training partner finally for his father. But immediately, the difference in dynamic with this pair compared to Vegeta and Trunks is night and day. Goku never allows him to feel like his inability to meet the goal is an instant failure, but instead, a necessary part of the journey. Quote, "Nobody is good at it overnight. Be patient, you were doing pretty well there. It just takes more work, that's all. Let's take a break, I'll cut your hair, it's getting shaggy." Every perceived setback or failure Gohan experiences, Goku is right there responding with encouragement and kindness.
Yeah, which is cool, which is
However,
nice, yeah.
conversely, once this line is uttered by Trunks following his humiliation at the hands of Cell, suddenly the relevance of all these cutaways makes a lot more sense.
父さんもこの変身ができたんだ。だがあえてしなかった。こうなるのが分かっていたから。
Where Goku has focused nearly all of his effort into nurturing his son to bring out his potential, Vegeta left Trunks completely out to dry.
Yeah,
a more
damn.
experienced warrior in every right, he was the mentor Trunks needed as they spent a year in that room together. But that never happened. They shared absolutely nothing with one another other than the space they occupied together. And after a year of forced proximity, the very best recognition Vegeta can offer Trunks is, at best, a backhanded compliment. Quote, "I'll tell you something that will really shock you. There's a guy named Trunks over there. He's almost as powerful as me."
Almost.
A guy named Trunks, not his son.
Yeah,
And moreover, the idea of Trunks somehow being almost as powerful as he must be shocking to anyone. Referring to himself as Super Vegeta, it's clear that despite Goku's efforts to create space for Vegeta to get to know his son and
He's
vice
not
versa,
bothered at
his
all.
mission in that room was nothing but one of self-obsessed
Yeah,
vanity.
I will
a
be
project he set
the
on to build
strongest.
a monument to his own strength, one that Cell himself tears down with joy, brick by brick, crack by crack, leaving Vegeta, when all is said and done, with nothing but his useless pride in tatters. And throughout it all, we are being shown glimpses of the genius in Goku's own approach. The slow and steady nurturing that is happening with his son in the background as Vegeta's hubris comes crashing down around him, and the ramifications of that reverberate out as the inexperienced Trunks faces the consequence of his impetuousness.
正気は完全になくなった。殺せ。
There must be some way out of all of this!
Trunks has failed a number of times in this arc, always in the name of doing the right thing.
Bless
he
him.
sets out to change the future for the better, but his lack of understanding of time travel itself leads to him assuming Frieza arriving on Earth before Goku was an anomaly to be corrected.
I love Future Trunks, man. His struggle, man. It's just, and then when he comes back in Super, and it's still even ongoing, and it's like,
causing him to alter the events of the timeline within seconds of his arrival. He tries his best to stop the activation of 17 and 18, but his ignorance of both Dr. Gero as well as the warriors he has allied himself with leads to a complete failure yet again. When the idea of surpassing Super Saiyan is mentioned, the very notion seems to baffle Trunks. In all his years surviving in his future, the thought had never even occurred to him. Time and time again, despite his incredible strength for his age, Trunks fails, never living up to the lofty expectations he was established under with his introduction. But this fight, this is the culmination of all that. The ultimate humiliation against his youthful ignorance. And with the juxtaposition of Goku's careful nurturing and training of Gohan, it becomes clear that this one, more than any mistake that came before, is not on Trunks to begin with. This one is Vegeta's failure. In this battle where Trunks wanted to prove that he wasn't a failure, that he could be the hero his timeline and mother needs, he failed. And all because his father never took the time to advise or nurture him in the same way Goku taught and nurtured his own son. And I suppose, according to Vegeta, sentiment is nothing more than a distraction on the road to ultimate power. So I guess that's consistent. But in a true twist of fate, the consequences of these actions are brought to a screeching halt. Because Cell doesn't kill Trunks.
では武道大会を開いてやる。
武道大会
And this is where I think things go from interesting to exceptionally interesting.
Yeah.
And between now and the conclusion of this video, I will be making the case that this tournament Cell proposes is not only the culmination of this arc, not just the culmination of the Gohan character, but the culmination of Goku and the entire series up until this point.
Yeah.
And frankly, I think it's a magnificent triumph of a conclusion in what is objectively the result of Toriyama's third narrative pivot. Egged on by his Saiyan genetics, Cell expresses he wants to start something called the Cell Games.
Hell
the announcement of which is
yes.
even more chilling than I remembered. There's something so unsettling about how cheery and matter-of-factly Cell says, and I quote, "And in the end, when I'm the victor, I will kill every single human being on this planet.
Damn.
I'll methodically come after every last one of you, and I'll watch your faces twist with fear."
Yo.
What a horrifyingly personal threat to each individual person alive
Imagine watching that and hearing that and being like, oh, that includes me.
on the planet. And now, off the back of that stunningly and horrifyingly announced event, just like he did when we were in the pits of negativity with Frieza as he stole Vegeta's will to fight, Akira Toriyama once again breaks out another rare instance of mid-chapter narration. Cell's broadcast filled the Earth's population with overwhelming fear. The world had no faith in the military or the police, marginalized after years of peace. The world had no faith in its champions. But the world had forgotten that long ago, there lived a little boy who fought the great demon king Piccolo. The world had forgotten the warrior that had turned against the threat of the Saiyans and Frieza. The world had forgotten Son Goku.
Let's go.
There's something special about what happens next. During Cell's revelation of the Cell Games, he makes mention of a specific tournament I loved from early Dragon Ball called the Tenkaichi Budokai. For the purposes of the Cell Games, he wanted to emulate that event in its presentation and rules. However, for me, this looming tournament, inspired by the contest that helped to define Dragon Ball's past, carries with it a special significance. A significance that stretches far beyond the confines of this one arc, and one that can be felt everywhere in this story because this has been the longest running story told in Dragon Ball's history. As fans of the series, we all understand where the story ultimately goes for Goku. And fittingly, Goku in these chapters follows an intentional and somewhat nostalgic path, revisiting characters that helped to shape who he was, expressing concerns he otherwise hadn't so directly before, emphasizing his role as the Earth's defender. Visibly angered by the military's attack on Cell leading to all their collective deaths, a mistake Goku solves by bringing Dende to Earth as the new Guardian thanks to his unique powers. And what's more is, the news broadcast following the military's defeat talks of their hope. Hope that just like a young boy rose up to defeat the great demon King Piccolo, there too will be another great hero that will stand up when no one else can for Cell. And as we're reading this, suddenly it all becomes clear. This is written to be Goku's ending.
Yeah.
A snapshot in time where he passes the torch to the next generation, to someone he knows deserves it, his son. In the past, we got to experience the 21st, 22nd, and 23rd Tenkaichi Budokais as 3 parts to what I expressed at the time were the greatest story Dragon Ball had ever told.
I'm loving this cover in the background, by the way. I can't remember what the original song's called, but good tune. And then it's really nice, and it's going really well with... everything about these reviews have been boss. Like, as soon as Mark's got like a tone of voice that he's talking in, it matches the music so well, and then it just blends with everything. And I'm feeling you get so much emotion from this. It's
a story centered around the progression of the next generation, one of passing the torch, responsibility, and heroism. A story centered around Son Goku, expressed in 3 parts as he grew older. After leaving the room, Goku made a series of announcements, but the most surprising had to have been his refusal to go back into the chamber another time. Surrounded by the likes of Trunks, Vegeta, and Piccolo, this seems like the obvious choice. However, this sudden refusal for me echoed a few wise words offered during the lead-up to his very first tournament. Quote, "Move well, study well, play well, eat well, rest well. That is the Turtle Hermit way."
Oh.
As Goku points out in this scene, both he and Gohan have already put in the work, and he refuses to rob their bodies of the rest it so sorely needs.
Right.
And when you look at this section with Goku through the lens of his past, there are plenty of poetic references. In this arc, Goku has done his best to foster Gohan's talents, and in this impending fight that Goku knows he will eventually lose, he plans on quitting. Much the same way Roshi bowed out to make room for the next generation in the 22nd
That's what
Tenkaichi
Goku's doing
Budokai,
as well.
Goku too will resign after feeling as though it is finally his time to allow someone else a turn. There are so many more things to that fight, and indeed references to the 23rd Tenkaichi Budokai elsewhere, but before we ultimately dive into the final fights of this arc, I felt it necessary to outline what have been surprisingly poignant chapters for Toriyama to pen. Chapters he wrote this way intentionally to, on some level, communicate to us the emotional gravity behind what's about to happen.
Right.
The anime only further drives this home, showcasing, dare I say, the best filler episodes the entire series sees.
Okay,
Son
yeah.
Gohan having his own encounters with the evils of humanity, and an encounter with the long-since forgotten mercenary Tao Pai Pai.
Yeah, that's
A
pretty
birthday
cool.
celebration, and the reminiscing that comes along with that. Every single filler episode is spent furthering this moment, these 10 days of peace before the Cell games.
Yeah.
And right before Goku flies off to the games, Chi-Chi asks him for 2 things: to come back alive and to not allow Gohan to fight. 2 promises that ultimately prove impossible for him to keep.
Yeah, there's no way you can do that. Oh, mate. Ugh.
Goku versus Cell. I might have just spoken on this battle in my lead-up analysis to it, but there's far more at play narratively in this fight than simply its ending, and a surprising amount in fact. As I touched on a moment ago, there's been a palpable poignancy and emotion in the writing of this arc. So much so that 100% of the comedic relief in this back quarter comes entirely from a certain champion of the world that will be receiving much more attention in the next part.
Yeah. That was boss. Sorry, I loved that the Buu thing. That was great. Ah, cool.
But the first aspect of this fight that comes to my attention was the uncomfortable kinship acknowledged and brought to the forefront between Goku and Cell.
Yeah.
Having just spoken of the virtues Goku embodies, I'm sure many of you might be confused as to what I'm alluding to here specifically. Well, in this fight, they both acknowledge how fulfilling and exciting this occasion is, simply because of how comparatively strong they both are, how evenly matched the contest is, putting the consequences to one side, if only for a moment, to enjoy the sport of it all. Not just for the battle-hungry Goku, but for the equally
Cell as well,
battle-hungry Cell. A creation meant for his destruction that, in a twist of irony, is arguably the perfect opponent Goku has always yearned for.
Perfect.
Naturally, Goku snaps out of this situationship he has with Cell once the Earth is seemingly targeted by Cell's Kamehameha, forcing Goku to bait his blast upwards. During this battle, Goku pulls out every trick he can muster against the mighty Cell, including a devastatingly powerful and amazingly cathartic Kamehameha.
Oh, that was the sickest. That was so sick. That as soon as it happened, he's like, ah!
His instant transmission, but it's still all to no effect. And as his stamina started to wane and Goku's time on the battlefield came to an end, I started to contemplate an interesting possibility Toriyama may have been trying to establish with this encounter. Having compared their similar levels of strength, their instinctive motivations in combat, part of me believes that Toriyama wanted to establish Cell as a metaphorical stand-in for Goku once he eventually quits. A choice that, once made, would mean that in order for Gohan to become the new defender of the Earth, he would need to defeat an enemy that's slightly stronger than his father, with that same hunger for combat. And once Goku tosses Cell that senzu bean, thematically, Gohan is not only facing off against the fighter that holds similar power and hunger to his father, but one that additionally can be seen as the personification of that poison within Goku's character. For while Goku may have been following the same path Roshi led him down with Gohan, intentionally or otherwise mirroring the events of the 21st and 22nd Tenkaichi Budokai, as we approach what Goku no doubt anticipates will be Gohan's 23rd Tenkaichi Budokai moment, one that will see him crowned as the Earth's #1 defender, that same poison surfaces in Goku, a poison that's blinded him to the truth that's been staring him right in the face since Gohan was born.
He's not a fighter.
Gohan versus Cell. In my view, this fight has 3 rather distinct phases, with each phase offering its own specific and emphatic conclusion that complements the subject of its phase. And unlike other final fights I've covered in this series, this fight is remarkably short. Typically within Dragon Ball, the final fights of these more serious arcs are
for
quite
a while.
extensive, exploring the themes of the material in a more thorough manner. So why does this fight feel much more on the short side? Well, because the fight itself isn't the payoff. The fight isn't the climax to this story that's being told, at least not entirely in my opinion. Unlike Frieza or Vegeta, Cell doesn't represent anything as profound or complicated to Gohan or Goku specifically. He represents something, sure, but his personality and character is far less pivotal to the main characters than others I've touched on. Cell's main function in the story, therefore, is to provide a target for our heroes to focus on, a stage for which to perform their acts upon. The main story of this arc is shared between Gohan and Goku, and the ending to this story starts with a mistake. Goku's mistake. In my previous 2 videos, I connected them through the themes they shared. In the Saiyan saga, I tried to explore the message of that arc, that being, the differences we are criticized for can be our greatest strengths. In other words, the differences that existed within Goku compared to the likes of his brother and Vegeta, who thought they themselves were model Saiyans, those differences they saw in Goku enabled him to learn key techniques and form lasting friendships that ultimately made the difference in that arc. Following on from that, the Frieza arc stretched those themes and ideas to their natural extremes, forcing us and Goku to contend with questions like, what happens when you encounter a foe your friends cannot help you best? Who threatens your very family? Someone that forces you into a corner to fight with instinct, forcing you to contend with what you are instead of who you are. Since then, as many of you might have noticed, I've refrained from continuing that thematic throughline for this video, until now. Once again, the Cell Saga extends these themes, explored in the prior 2 arcs, and pushes them even further. Goku, despite being cornered on Namek, still gave Frieza an out. He didn't want to kill him. His upbringing helped to define who he was. And so, because Goku led this life, he expects a lot of his son, Gohan. And in a way, this mistake, this misjudgment, takes Goku full circle back to the Saiyan saga. In the same way Vegeta and Raditz expected Goku to be one way, Goku too misjudged what Gohan was and placed him in a circumstance that while he, Goku, would have loved it, Gohan didn't. And what's more
not the same.
it terrified him. For the entire series, Gohan is framed as totally different to his father.
Yep.
His introduction totally mirrors Goku's. Where Goku was introduced demonstrating martial arts and saving Bulma, Gohan is introduced by politely and anxiously introducing himself before being kidnapped. Goku's first on-screen training was with Roshi, the Earth's hero, while Gohan was forced to train, against his will, with the Earth's greatest villain at the time. It should have been clear to Goku that Gohan was totally different to him, and during the fight with Cell, this is all shown to him and us over and over. But the thing is, this mistake is largely kept under wraps for quite a while. As Gohan begins to fight with Cell, there is a feeling, a presumption by the reader that this plan is destined for success. Since leaving the Room of Spirit and Time, Goku, who we know is a tactical genius in battle, has been completely confident in this plan of
you'd think like,
and while we may have once known Gohan as
cause it's like Goku's the main character and like he figures everything out and he's saying to us as the audience, you know what, Gohan's got this. He is the man. I am gonna let him take the limelight. And you're like, well, Goku surely is right. He's been right about everything else. And then as this goes on, it's like, oh my god, no, you've really misread this.
Skittish, scared little kid. He's grown a lot since then. Faced the likes of Vegeta, the Ginyu Force, and even Frieza head on.
But it's all been out
and
of
now,
like...
coming off a year of somewhat secret training with his father, there's the feeling that this will be the final step in his journey to become a hero. The hero. But Gohan, our newfound point of view, figures this out just about as quickly as we do, and reveals to us the underlying emotion within him that we are all not privy to. He knows his father's plan will work, but he doesn't really want it to, because he doesn't like fighting.
Yeah.
When this scenario is pushed to its natural conclusion, Gohan will almost certainly erupt in a fit of rage, and the gap between their respective strengths will completely close. But this is not something Gohan wants to happen in the first place. These fits of powerful rage are not a point of pride for Gohan, but a weakness instead. And worse still, telling Cell this doesn't scare him off, because of course it wouldn't. As we've said before, Cell in this instance is a de facto stand-in of Goku. The thought of an opponent erupting into rage and becoming as strong as Cell is about as perfect as a promise he could possibly ask for. Cell says, and I quote, "Did you think I would get cold feet if you told me that? You still think like a kid. Now I want to see you."
Yeah.
As Cell takes things up a notch and
Just
begins
keeps
to
trying to
absolutely
push
pummel
him.
the
Yeah,
ever-loving
man.
life out of Gohan in an attempt to make him angry, the true crux of Goku's mistake is revealed, and it goes even deeper than Gohan not being battle-hungry like his father, as Piccolo lays out plainly.
なぜお父さんは僕が苦しんで死にそうなのに助けてくれないんだろう。僕の命よりフェアな男らしい勝負の方が大切なんだろうかと。
Goku mistook Gohan's previous fits of rage as an extension of his fighting prowess, an additional level to his strength. But that's not what they ever were. Gohan was only ever pushed to those fits of rage as an involuntary, painful, need-driven attempt to protect others.
Yeah.
Looking back as far as the beginning of this series, the only time Gohan has ever really erupted as a self-defense mechanism is when Piccolo chucked him at a mountain as a toddler.
Yep.
Every other instance of his rage-driven
It's
power
been
was
to
in
help someone
service of
else.
someone else.
Yeah.
A friend, someone in need, anyone but himself. Outbursts that came when there was no one left to protect those he loved. But this time, everyone is right there, safely watching from the hills, his own father perhaps capable of at least hurting Cell standing by as Gohan is beaten to the ground. He isn't angry, he's just hurt and frightened. Now, of course, by the time Goku truly comes to terms with the situation he's put his son in, it's too late. It doesn't take long for Cell to realize that Gohan is not the type of person to react to his own harm.
So the
Cell
Cell
gets
Juniors.
his little Cell
Yeah.
Juniors to pummel all of Gohan's friends and family, as Cell keeps him out of the fight himself. And as a result, Goku's strategic plan to leverage Gohan has completely fallen apart. With more than Cell at play, someone is going to die before Gohan erupts. Whether it be himself, Yamcha, Krillin, so many of the onlookers have died once already, and Dende's new Dragon Balls are still not capable of reviving someone twice.
Son Gohan.
When I first read this moment, I
God.
honestly felt as though it was strange to have 16 be the one to offer this advice to Gohan. But upon reflection, in truth, it seems almost perfect, the two of them sharing this moment together. Not only in terms of the thematic power of having a literal machine delivery speech on the value of life, humanity, and the moral obligation to protect those things, but also a person created in the image of his father, designed to possess not only great power, but literal explosive capabilities inside of him. A person who was ultimately seen as a failure due to his timid nature. However, now 16 is stripped of all his weapons of terror. No more rockets, no more bombs, no more offensive tools at his disposal. All that remains are these timid qualities. Qualities that make 16 the perfect person to be speaking to Gohan at this moment. At the end of it all, much like Gohan, it isn't 16 himself that he speaks about protecting. 16 isn't concerned in the slightest with his own well-being in this moment, despite his current circumstances. Instead, he asks Gohan to protect the ones which he loves. Those who cannot protect themselves. To protect the animals and nature that he cares for. There couldn't have been a more perfect request, nay, catalyst, to appeal to and ignite the sleeping beast within Son Gohan.
Gohan, listen to me. Sai, Gohan, non è peccato combattere quando la causa è giusta.
Ao contrário, é uma boa ação.
I love this, using all the different languages for it. It's cool.
Ono, να αφήσεις ελεύθερη την οργή που έχει βαθιά μέσα σου. Entiendo cómo te sientes, pero ya no tienes por qué seguir soportándolo. Mufan, 我最喜愛嘅就係呢一個大自然。Protect them for me. A fatality.
Let's go.
I don't think I need to say much on what fate befalls the Cell Juniors. They are completely and utterly dismantled
so
by
cool to
Gohan
watch,
without so much
yes.
as a second thought. Defeats that were depicted as puffs of smoke in the anime are presented far more graphic in the manga,
Yeah, I've seen the
with their
clips.
eyes and limbs flying everywhere upon contact with the clinical and now cerebral Son Gohan.
Mate, the music is
From the
sick.
moment this young man snapped, the battle was already lost for Cell. Every single interaction from this point on is Cell coming to terms with just how in over his head he truly is. Even destroying his Cell Juniors, which were clearly similar in strength to him,
They're meant to be as strong
is
as him,
enough
aren't they?
to anger and unnerve him. As Cell powers to his maximum, Gohan is completely unimpressed. 3 solitary blows. That's all it takes. Extended in the anime, but in the manga, it's emphatically clear just how fucked Cell is. Now, deeply injured beyond anything Goku managed in just a few choice blows, but it is at this point that we see the true difference between Goku and Cell. where Goku, when faced against a foe he can't possibly measure up to, responds with unwavering determination to overcome the obstacle and reach new heights. Cell completely breaks down and cracks under the pressure. Maybe it's those genetics from Frieza within him that elicits such a scared, childlike response. Much the same way Frieza, when finally met with someone stronger than him, petulantly immediately resorted to blowing up the planet. Cell too takes to the skies and charges an Earth-ending Kamehameha. But once again, all involved underestimate the strength that lay dormant within Gohan. But alas, nothing gold can stay. As Cell continues to fall apart in disbelief, a dormant poison is revealed within the young man. Where his father fell victim to his deep-seated desire to fight stronger opponents, to reach new heights at nearly all costs, Gohan too has a poison within him. A tendency, it would seem, to exact a thorough vengeance against those who wronged his loved ones. It's a side of Gohan we've never really seen before, given every other fit of rage before this was essentially an unconscious outburst, but it's a wrinkle that certainly makes a lot of sense now. If turning Super Saiyan was enough to push Goku, the most kind-hearted and peaceful soul in this story, to sending his son away while he still has his senses left, imagine what Gohan, driven purely by righteous fury, must have going through his head as he is capable of bringing the utterly irredeemable Cell to his knees before him. It is such a natural conclusion of all elements involved, both with Gohan's character and the ferocity that Super Saiyan begets, as was mentioned volumes ago by Vegeta. And while for the time being Gohan may be capable of toying with his prey, continually trouncing an inflated Cell, even causing him to vomit out poor Android 18, it is this poison within him that will ultimately lead to a downfall, an ultimate price that only one person can pay.
Oh, Goku.
やっぱどう考えてもこれしか地球が助かる道は思い浮かばなかった。バイバイ、みんな。
Despite knowing that his son could have put him away, despite screaming and pleading with him to put this threat to bed while he still has a chance, knowing this terrifying entity would start to feel desperate at one point or another, despite all of that, this moment is remarkably still. Quiet even. There's no resentment, disappointment, or I told you so's. Just silent acceptance, kindness, and love. Unbeknownst to Goku, he still had one last act as the Earth's #1 defender to carry out. One last lesson to offer his son that he could not be more proud of. A lesson he offers him through action. A lesson that occurs during a snapshot in time where both he and his son totally understand each other. Goku knows that Gohan isn't him. He's still only an 11-year-old child, and right now he needs his father more than anything else. He needs someone who can turn an impossible situation like this around and fix his mistake. During the 23rd Tenkaichi Budokai, Goku walked into and confronted that dire set of circumstances with an unshakable level of confidence, composure, and not to mention humility. And within that tournament, as the final fight that determined the fate of the world took place, no matter how bad everything got, no matter the condition of the ring, his body, or the desire of his friends to lend a hand, Goku not only wanted to stop Piccolo, but he wanted and needed to do it alone so that he could win the tournament. And not only is Gohan not capable of that unshakable mindset, but I don't think anyone in this story is. And with that acknowledgement, Goku places his hand on Cell, turns his head with the promises Chi-Chi asked him to keep weighing heavily in his mind. He smiles and says, "You did well, Gohan. I'm proud of you. Tell your mom I'm sorry." That is Goku's ending. His definitive ending that was intended by Akira Toriyama. All of the emotional and nostalgic lead up to this moment, one that tried to convince us that Goku was yet again teeing up for another cataclysmic battle of good versus evil, has instead been revealed to be one of the most touching and fitting send-offs any character could have hoped for. However, Unlike every other arc prior, this is no longer Goku's story. It's Gohan's. And now, with his final lesson having been learned, it's time for him to stand unshakable when no one else can.
Trunks, no!
As I've alluded to on a number of occasions, while a large amount of focus was placed on Goku and Gohan's relationship, Vegeta and Trunks have contributed a captivating and somewhat difficult to experience story. One that felt as though it was destined for tragedy. One that might, despite everything they've gone through, end with Trunks returning home unfulfilled and Vegeta returning to the status quo. Never to concern himself with sentiment ever again. But neither of these things happened. From the very beginning of Vegeta's journey, he's demonstrated a cold and harsh demeanor. A philosophy of might makes right, and if he isn't the mightiest, then he needs to become the mightiest. No matter what stands in his way. Everything from killing your own teammate to scolding others for making the save on him instead of the strategic play is permissible. Sure, his mindset cost him once or twice, but you can't argue with the results. He became a Super Saiyan. A Super Saiyan that pushed past the level of Super Saiyan before anyone else. And if he can stay dispassionate, if he can stay ruthless, cold-hearted, focus on himself, and avoid sentiment. In this scene, and in this arc, Goku and Vegeta both learn to appreciate their children for who they really are. And unfortunately, it took extreme circumstances for them to come to terms with that. Throughout this arc, Vegeta has been a belligerent and egotistical sociopath, the likes of which threaten the Earth and is one of the main reasons we have to endure this fight at all. Simply put, while Goku thought he knew who his son was but was mistaken, Vegeta simply convinced himself and others that he couldn't have cared less. And when all the chips were down, when Goku and Vegeta were backed into a corner of their own creation, mind you, that's when the ball dropped. When Vegeta arrived on the battlefield and watched the action unfold, you could tell that there was a tremendous amount of fear in his eyes, body, and words looking at Cell. But when this happened, when Cell took from him something he never knew he valued, his body moved almost without order. There was no more strategy. There was no more pride in himself. No more
doesn't even go Super Saiyan
for a brief moment in time. Instead, his
instantly
body moved
anyway.
to avenge and attack the murderer of his only son. And unfortunately,
it's not enough.
Sentiment on this occasion cost him. It's remarkable how despite this final battle really only concerning two powerful entities, Gohan and Cell, Trunks, Vegeta, and Goku all have a role to play in the big finale feeling as resonant as it ultimately becomes. Having returned from the future to help save Goku, to ensure that Goku gets the heart medicine and makes it to the battlefield to change their future, despite things changing considerably, Trunks is forced to watch on as Goku ends up being one of the main reasons Cell becomes as powerful and dangerous as he ultimately does.
Yeah, like the whole like, oh, I'm stronger now. Got a Zenkai boost, like you Saiyans do. My cells, you gotta destroy everything.
With the last thing he sees right before he dies being the cold embrace of death brought on by the tyrant he tried and failed to kill. Cell said it himself, and I quote, "Son Goku didn't defeat me at all. He just made me better." In response to this, Vegeta, following his first selfless act he's ever attempted, ends up needing to be saved. In a fashion that almost perfectly mirrors the save Gohan
it's very
offered
similar
him
to
against
Namek.
Goku all those years ago. Only this time, it's different. This time, Vegeta understands. He doesn't scold Gohan for not using this as an opportunity to kill Cell. He simply says, sorry. And this resounding and phenomenal build-up to what is the best beam struggle in the series.
Hell yeah, it is.
Sees on one side, Cell, now having returned more powerful than ever, having removed any and all hope of anyone else helping in this battle, and Gohan now, much like his future self, reduced to only using one arm. It's an incredible
Never
moment
thought about that.
only gets better the closer you look at its outstanding writing. Everyone is cursing their own powerlessness. Vegeta's uncharacteristic apology even suggests a level of hopelessness itself. And as Cell powers up his solar system destroying Kamehameha, Gohan too resigns himself to death. That is until...
ご飯諦めるなんてサイヤ人らしくねえぞ。お父さん。
No matter how bad things got against Piccolo in the 23rd Tenkaichi Budokai, Goku never gave up. He never stopped believing he was going to come out victorious. With his energy bordering on empty and every last one of his limbs out of commission, he, the Earth's defender, never lost hope. But Gohan needs reassurance. He's not like his father. He's not able to do what he did. But with 3 good limbs left and half his ki still remaining, Goku's not about to let his son throw in the towel just yet. Goku not only steps in to save his son with a sacrifice, but he stands in behind him every step of the way in this final struggle for the fate of the universe. This is a moment that demonstrates the payoff to Gohan's character arc, yes, but it is also the moment Goku truly demonstrates that he understands and wants to support his son. A support that even death itself cannot stand in his way from offering.
I will be there in the
This is Son
afterlife.
Goku's true strength. Quote, "You can do it. Believe in yourself. One last time, show me the power we made together." The anime extends this scene quite a lot, extending it to include others who can help, but in actuality, this moment of pushing himself alongside his father, that's the payoff. That's the climax. And because of that, the struggle itself is so much shorter than you might recall in the manga, but it does include one last piece of icing for us to enjoy as readers and viewers. It also pays off the arc Vegeta has been going on in this story, finding meaning in being a support player without which Gohan may have never won without. In every sense of the word, Vegeta's story in this arc is as important as Goku and Gohan's. And without Vegeta finding that confidence within himself to assist when all the chips were down, this fight could have ended very differently.
Vegeta! And now the end is near.
Whew, okay. This arc has taken us a very long way. More so than pretty much any other arc before it. It covers a span of years following the journeys of characters that change drastically over the course of it all. It is a remarkable journey, much more so than I had previously given it credit for, and at the end of it all that remains is Son Gohan, lying on the ground with a smile on his face, and Son Goku watching from the afterlife with an even bigger smile, if you can believe that.
Bless.
As Gohan and Co. fly off to recuperate, and Satan begins to work on taking credit for it all, Vegeta finds himself at an impasse. Fully aware of how outclassed he was by both men and the Sun family, all he can seem to really care about is that Kakarot is gone.
Yeah.
How dare you die like that, he says, having gone through a journey of his own and having relinquished himself to an act of selflessness at the end of it all. Vegeta is left with nothing. No Kakarot to defeat, no Cell to overcome. Nothing remains for him. And so, in a turn that no one could possibly expect, he resolves to never fight again. Well, for now at least. And so, with Cell gone, everyone heads to the lookout to get to work reviving those who lost their lives. Trunks gets his first revival, but the real focus here is on Goku. As they plead with Shenlong to provide any chance of reviving Goku, the man himself pipes in thanks to King Kai once again. Goku mentions something Bulma had said to him before, that it seems like he manages to attract bad guys, and that maybe the Earth
If he's
will have
not
a better
there,
shot
we
without
must
him around.
it'd be safe, yeah.
He's not being a martyr though, as he gets to be
Excuse
himself
me.
in the afterlife, keeping his body and fighting strong guys that exist in that realm.
Because
But I will say, both of his parting words really caught my eye and tell a story of both the Goku he has become and the Goku we have always known. The first quote was, "Don't bring me back to life, okay? Gohan's more dependable than I ever was anyway." An open acknowledgement of his personal weaknesses as a savior, and then, in the most Goku way possible, he says, "So, that's it. We'll meet again when you die. See you later." Killing off your main character, a character readers have spent literal years with at this point, is very hard. hard not only to let go of as a writer, but also to do without it
Yeah, and then
feeling
the Buu Saga
utterly
happens,
depressing.
which it's good, but
But this
it's
final
just...
goodbye from him, well, just like Krillin says, who else but Goku would be that cheerful even though he was dead? And so it's hard to feel bad in the face of his infinite positivity. With the Earthlings revived and a selfless wish made to remove the bomb from 18, the fighters go their separate ways, convening once more to see Trunks off as he returns to the future that he ventured forth from. As he leaves for his epilogue, everyone is seen wearing black armbands, a customary mark of mourning in Japan, no
I
doubt
never noticed
in honor
that.
of the beloved son
Huh.
Goku. And speaking of that epilogue, the final 2 chapters of this arc really do bring everything back together. There is something endlessly cathartic about seeing Trunks return to
Hell
his decrepit
yes.
future and utterly annihilating those androids which brought him so much pain before. Though Trunks may have spent the entire arc failing time and time
He
again,
finally gets the
charging
win.
into situations ill-prepared for what's to come, that is not the case here. Disintegrating 18 in one blow and 17 in 2, Trunks is thoroughly prepared for this fight. It's a moment he has been preparing for since this arc started years ago, and in true Trunks fashion, he spares no time putting them
Hell
down.
yes.
The same goes for this timeline's Cell, as he spends an entire chapter dismantling Cell's ignorance and beating the ever-loving pulp out of him, before extinguishing him entirely. Trunks' story is done, and
Yes.
given all the hardship he's been through, it's a well-earned happy ending.
It's a shame Super takes that away, but
We're finally at the end of this bad boy. This arc is long. Boy, is it long. But again,
It's brilliant, though.
I think I really underestimated this thing. Before I started my reread of it for this video, I was genuinely worried that I wouldn't have very much to say on it. And now here I am, roughly 2 hours of a video later, and there's honestly a ton of stuff I wanted to gush about more that I had to skip over. It definitely has its detractors, especially among anime viewers, but the experience in the manga is, honestly, phenomenal. So boy, am I thankful that this is the longest arc in the series. Nothing could possibly be longer than this. Aren't I supposed to be interrupted with a joke to the Buu arc now or something? Hello?
So I can't use the helmet for the tournament. Can you come up with a workaround?
Think you can pull off a do-rag?
Oh, whoa! Okay, so is this the team... Oh, okay.
I mean, I can try. So, what do you think, Trunks?
I think if I'm honest, Mom will ground me. Probably.
Well, if it isn't the great Saiyan man
Alright, so this is Team 4 Stars. Oh my god, this is sick.
gracing us with his presence, having fun using our name for your stupid superhero bullshit.
Vegeta, did you take out the trash like I asked?
Why? We have slaves for that.
Stop calling them slaves.
Fine. Interns.
Okay.
Thank you.
Hey, Vegeta, you taking part in the World Martial Arts Tournament too?
Why? So I can beat up a bunch of weaklings for money? I'm already rich and I've got nothing to prove.
What if I was there?
Oh no, the voices are back.
No, I'm real. Hey, King Kai, am I real?
Oh my god, I can't believe that. This is brilliant. This is so good.
Oh, yeah, no, I'm real.
Not according to that court-ordered quack!
Actually, I hear him too.
What the hell?
Heaven, actually.
Interesting. So I think what's going to happen here is we've got the Buu Saga review, and I think we'll get clips because they're not going to do the Buu Saga. They've always said they're not going to do the Buu Saga. I think they're going to use Mark's review as an opportunity to do bits, jokes maybe they had potentially. That's cool. It's really cool to see them doing stuff like that. Oh man, that review was boss. That review was so good. It's so well edited. Everything's just so well put together. The discussion's great, and yeah, that was boss. So when the Buu one comes out, we'll check it out, and hopefully we'll have some more Team 4 Star clips in there. That'd be cool. Yeah, thank you to my patrons. If you want to have your name at the end of every video upload, link in the description to the Patreon page. $1 moment size support. Sounds greatly appreciated. Thank you for that, and thank you all for watching. What do you guys think of that? What do you guys think of this? Click like, subscribe if you haven't already. Leave comments down below. Let me know what you watch because of future videos. I'll see you guys next time.